Okay, we should be live. That was a little bit over a minute. Good evening, everybody who is watching and can see us and hear us. Pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.021 and the current state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this work session of the Independent School District 279 School Board will be conducted via electronic means, internet video conference. Consistent with current state and federal pandemic guidance, Superintendent Corey McIntyre and Board Chair Mike Ostapi have determined that due to the health pandemic and emergency declaration, a meeting format allowing for an open in-person attendance is not practical or prudent. As a result, it is unfeasible for at least one board member, the superintendent or general counsel, to be physically present at the regular meeting location. It is also not feasible for members of the public to attend the regular meeting location. Members of the public may monitor the meeting electronically by streaming online or at district279.org About Us School Board Meeting Materials. An archived copy of the video recording of this meeting will also be available on the district website. Our mission is to inspire and prepare all students with the confidence, courage, and competence to achieve their dreams, contribute to community, and engage in a lifetime of learning, and especially in this current environment. The purpose of the school board work session tonight is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular board meetings. Tonight's topic is our COVID-19 response and the distance learning plan. The outcome of tonight's meeting should be that all board members will receive a status update on the components of the plan, the response, and go forward plan. So that is the welcome and the purpose. And with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent McIntyre for the check-in.
Thank you, Chair Ostafi, and thank you, board members and cabinet members and some additional leaders joining us tonight. I know it's a little unusual and we're all learning how to do this together, so thanks for being patient, and try to remind yourself to try to keep your microphones muted throughout the meeting, as it'll help everybody not experience any feedback, which, as you all know, can be a little annoying. So thank you very much for that. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to share tonight how the school districts executed the governor's executive orders for K-12 education during the COVID-19 pandemic, and update you on the components of our district distance learning plan. Before we get started, I just want to say to the board and our team and our viewing audience, on behalf of my executive team, please accept our best wishes for safety and good health during this time. To put tonight's comments into context, I want to go back about a month. On Sunday, March 15th, Governor Walz ordered all Minnesota school districts to do three things. First, close schools from March 18th through March 27th in order to provide staff time to create a distance learning plan that could be implemented starting March 30th. Second, provide free childcare for emergency workers and first responders. And third, provide free meals to children 18 and younger. The governor's order meant that just within a matter of days, Minnesota public schools needed to take basically primarily a brick and mortar model of school and turn it into a distance or virtual learning model. In the Osseo area schools, we were well positioned to take on this challenge because of two key factors. First, and maybe most importantly, in 2013, our community passed a levy that allowed us to develop a digital learning for all plan, and that included purchasing of thousands of mobile devices for students to use for learning. And without our community support for that tech levy, I can't imagine how we'd have been able to implement distance learning for all during this pandemic. Our plan reflects an incredible amount of work done by talented educators over a very short period of time, and I'm extremely grateful for the outstanding work they've done. And it really all started with the community support for that levy. So I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to our voters for understanding the critical role technology plays in education and how it's really making a difference for us today. We're also well positioned because we had at least some experience with distance learning. You may recall earlier this year, we canceled school due to severe weather, and we implemented flex learning at the secondary level for students that day. And even though it was one day of experience, it was very helpful as we expanded that plan down to our pre-K through 5 grade levels. And that experience really helped us. But what we've really experienced is a monumental shift in how we do schools, and that really has changed what school looks like for our students, our families, and our staff. What we're learning is individualized education is very much evident, necessary, and it's here now. And flexible learning models will need to be developed moving into the future. Many aspects of our traditional model are going to be questioned more than ever, and equitable education access and delivery are going to be essential. And we're showing, and those things are showing up differently in our distance learning model. Leading and managing is changing quickly, and it's in real time, and it requires partnerships and really a lot of creativity and innovation to accelerate how we're doing learning, setting goals, and really creating the desired daily experience we're hoping for. Even though it's my first year superintendent, I do want to say in my 20-year career, I can't recall a moment that has made me prouder than I am tonight. I'm proud of the intentional, deliberate, hardworking way our district and our school teams and our school community has responded to the governor's executive order. We met this challenge with an expanded leadership team that intentionally sought out perspectives from every sector of our work. We've banded together to develop plans designed to minimize disruption to teaching and learning, feed thousands of students each day, every week, and provide childcare to our healthcare workers and emergency responders, and really try to prevent, in the end, potential exposure to the virus. As of today, we successfully completed 7 days of distance learning, and school's been out over a month, but it is only our 7th day, so we're still new to this. And we also know we need to really work at sustaining what we're doing over time, which is a tall order. But I can assure you that we're committed to delivering rigorous and engaging instruction for every child for the duration of distance learning. We've also identified areas where we're not satisfied yet. You're going to hear some of that tonight, and we'll use that information to continue to improve. I also want to just take a moment to recognize the fact that these changes really do take a toll on our students, our families, and our staff. So I want to just take the moment to speak directly to our parents and guardians and know that they're taking on new roles to support their child's education. I personally know how hard that is. I have 3 children at home as well, and you might even hear them in the background. So I want our families to know that we miss your children, and we know they miss their friends and the adults at school. We're extremely grateful for your support as parents and guardians, and for your patience, understanding, and encouragement as we navigate all the new challenges that are coming our way. Board members, tonight you're going to learn how we're serving students and families through our distance learning plan. And you've been getting some daily updates, but our goal tonight is to really give you a comprehensive look within the time constraints we have and the technology limitations. Hopefully you'll gain a greater understanding of our work and the creativity that's gone into the plan so far. That'll only continue into the future. Our entire staff has stepped up to the call to action because they love kids and they know how important it is to reach every child in our district, and that they're continuing to learn and grow even during these challenging times. I want to thank our staff for their hard work while these changes are happening in their work lives. At the same time, they're managing personal life and family changes too. We couldn't be prouder. I can't say enough about the dedication and talented work of our school leaders, teachers, support staff, and students. So with that being said, I want to dive into our agenda. Thank you for being patient and working with us on this format. And tonight we'll work through a process where I'll introduce the topic and each speaker. That helps out our technology process as well. And this will allow each speaker time they need to unmute their mic and be ready to present. So thanks to everyone for keeping their video on and their audio muted unless speaking. The accounts you'll hear tonight are only snapshots of the daily work in this new normal. Given the time constraints I mentioned, we can't actually reflect all the great work staff are doing as a part of our amazing response, but it is an opportunity to share our work. So there will be an opportunity for board members at the end to share comments, questions, and any additional follow-up information you desire once we've presented everything. So with that, we'll jump right in and we'll start with our first component of distance learning. And I'm going to ask Jeremy Willey, our Director of Learning and Achievement, to kick off the evening. Jeremy?
Good evening. The Department of Learning and Achievement, in collaboration with I2T2, Educational Equity, and Student Services, has worked tirelessly to support students, families, and teachers in this new distance learning environment. As a result, there are 6 areas that I would like to share information with you about this evening. They are instructional activities for students, professional development for teachers, digital learning resources to support teachers, instructional supports, assessment, and grading. In each area, I will provide you with examples of things we have accomplished, our current work, and any challenges as we move forward. As far as accomplishments in the area of instructional activities for students are concerned, at the elementary level, flex learning boards for pre-K through fifth grade students were developed and distributed for the first 2 weeks of distance learning. Teachers were also provided with a template to continue to develop their own flex learning boards collaboratively. At the secondary level, we have provided and will continue to provide support for teachers in brainstorming ideas for lessons that would engage students in learning. At both levels, digital resource sites were created for students to provide additional instructional opportunities. Currently, our staff development assessment specialist teams are researching lessons and materials that meet current standards and can be added to both Schoology courses and our Flex learning boards. Challenges that we face in this area are ensuring that all students have access to the instructional materials and are ensuring that activities are focused on grade level standards. Another challenge is maintaining learned standards, building upon that learning, and determining when or how to deliver new learning in the form of direct instruction. In our second area, which is focused on professional development for teachers, our accomplishments are we have created what we're calling a pop-up PD, which are short 10 to 25-minute professional learning sessions aligned to specific topics, tools, or activities for distance learning. They are initially done in a live Google Meet and are recorded and shared for teachers who could not attend. We have also offered grade level and content-based Google Meets and Schoology groups to provide teachers with an opportunity to connect with each other, problem solve, and share resources for distance learning. Our current work in professional development is centered around developing a fully online professional development experience for our upcoming System Staff Development Day for teachers. This professional learning will be focused on support for distance learning and preparations for the next school year. We will also continue to develop additional pop-up PD based on teacher needs as determined through conversations and surveys. Our third area of focus centers around creating digital learning tools to support teachers. Supports for accessing and using digital tools have been created for students, families, and staff. These supports are in the form of video clips, presentations, and documents. Documents on copyright and fair use, third-party tools, and virtual conferencing in the form of Google Meet have also been created as guidance for staff during distance learning. Our current work in this area involves developing the aforementioned pop-up PD sessions, which have been created to support teachers using digital tools. One challenge we have faced is that vendors are making access to third-party tools free during this time. Tools have not been vetted to assure alignment with curriculum and instruction, as well as student data privacy. For our next area, instructional supports, we have provided and will continue to provide digital resources in the form of digital texts and online resources. We have also provided and will continue to provide middle school and high school teachers with individual feedback on their Schoology courses from a student perspective. Moving forward, we are providing ongoing support for professional learning teams by facilitating virtual PLTs at sites with grade levels and departments. Finally, in our areas of assessment and grading, we are currently creating professional development for teachers on authentic summative assessments and on providing feedback and ways for students to show their learning. We are also collecting information from other school districts related to assessment and grading, engaging in conversations with lead principals, and creating a high school guide for grading. One challenge we have faced related to assessment and grading is ensuring that assessments are equitable and measure a student's learning around the standard independent of family assistance. We are striving to create equitable access to instruction for all learners and to fairly assess student progress in this distance learning environment. While our efforts are not without challenge, the Department of Learning and Achievement is working with resolve to ensure that students, families, and teachers have the appropriate supports needed to be successful with distance learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next, we'll hear from Anthony Paternos, our Executive Director of Technology, regarding the technology support for the distance learning plan. Anthony?
Good evening, Chair Ostafi, Superintendent McIntyre, Board, and community. Tonight I'm going to share some of the logistics to support distance learning as Jeremy described, including technology resources. The work we have been able to accomplish with distance learning has only been possible because of voters' support for the technology levy in 2013 and our amazing staff who have been committed to the success of each of our learners to actualize our mission during these times. In a 2-week time period, we transitioned a sizable organization into a mobile learning and workforce, something that takes significant planning time under normal conditions. One of our first tasks to ensure the success of distance learning was to distribute digital and physical resources to staff and students. This took a lot of collaboration between departments and sites, including Transportation, Informational and Instructional Technology Team, Learning and Achievement, Department of Educational Equity, principals, and of course, our teachers. Our first round of distribution saw over 90% of materials either picked up at sites or delivered on the scheduled days. The remaining materials were picked up or delivered after further coordination by building principals. These initial materials included physical curriculum and technology. We ensured that each of our 4 through 12 students had their assigned one-to-one devices home and deployed an additional 3,307 iPads at the K through 3 level to ensure every family had access to at least one device in their home. We continue to review the technology needs of our students and are looking to provide additional devices to families where needed to ensure there is enough technology access in the home to support multiple students during distance learning. We have currently deployed a total of 17,159 student devices, which includes what has already been out in our one-to-one program. And we've also equipped 766 staff members with a laptop or Chromebook device in order to work remotely. Going forward, we continue to do deployment of curricular materials on a 2-week basis. This provides flexibility and opportunity for our staff to adjust and make modifications as the learning continues to understand and meet the needs of their students. Having the technology to facilitate rich learning is only as good as the internet access that exists. There are a variety of reasons and barriers some families may have for not being connected to the internet. We have been working very hard to support families around internet access needs. One way we have done this is through providing families with a list of internet resources that have been made available through a variety of internet providers during this time. We have also been exploring partnerships with organizations such as Brooklyn Bridge Alliance, the City of Brooklyn Park, and CCX Media on additional opportunities to support this access with families. Our team is also exploring options to provide mobile hotspots to families in need. At this time, we have identified 291 families that still do not have internet connectivity in their homes and are looking at all the available resources to find how we can very quickly shrink that number and get families the access they need. We do know that our provided technology resources are supporting our teachers to create engaging learning opportunities for our students. Here are some quick statistics that we have been gathering during the first week of distance learning. During week 1, we saw 11,000 users on Chromebooks visiting 11.4 million websites, of which 86.4% of that content was educational related. There were 26,676 Google Meets conducted, and our peak usage by students was between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. In comparison to our first week of school in March, when students were physically present, we saw the same number of 11,000 users on Chromebooks, but only visiting 6.8 million websites, of which 88.5% was educational related. And our peak usage was between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., very consistent with a traditional brick and mortar classroom setting where students were using that technology during the school day. During the first 2 weeks of March, there were only a total of 112 Google Meets completely conducted. Specific to our elementary level, we have seen 3.8 thousand students log into Clever, which is a tool we use to connect them to district-supported learning tools such as vocabulary and Woot Math. This is in addition to the foundational learning activities being provided on the Flex Learning boards. In Schoology, which we experienced several challenges during the first week of distance learning, as multiple states were going into distance learning on the same time, those issues have since been resolved, and we have seen good consistency and stability in the tool this week. Looking at that tool and how it has been engaged since we have been closed and gone into distance learning, we have seen 14,695 students engage with Schoology. And in the last 7 days alone, which is really spring break and our first 2 days of this week, we have seen students submit 48,401 evidence of work to their teachers. In order to keep the technology up and going for students and staff, our technology support team has been running in full force. Our support desk has adjusted to greater centralized processes that have become a main technical support line for families. During our first week, the team responded to 647 family-generated support tickets, and we have conducted technical repairs on 268 student devices. In comparison, we typically see 1 to 2 family help desk tickets come in a month into our help desk, as most support goes through the buildings. Staff support has also become more centralized during this time, with a greater shift towards how to use support over technical breaks. During the first week of distance learning alone, we had 1,054 help desk tickets created, with 900 of them resolved. In comparison, when we're physically in the sites, we typically see around 300 tickets created and 300 tickets resolved per week. There has been great work happening because of our digital resources and the collaboration of a lot of staff to support our students and families. Thank you for your support, and I'll turn it back over to Corey.
Thank you, Anthony. So it goes without saying, incredible work happening in our technology team over the last couple of weeks, and we know we'll continue to be challenged moving forward, but the team has really stepped up and delivered on meeting the needs of our system. So thank you so much. I'm going to transition to Kate Emmons, Director of Student Services, who will share with you the work of our school nurses in our Health Services Department. Kate?
Hello. Greetings, Chair Ostapi, Superintendent McIntyre, the school board, and the community. I'm pleased to bring you some information about our school nurses. The first thing that they tackled, can you hear me okay? Because I'm on my, okay, thank you. The first thing that their nurses tackled was returning the meds with little notice. So they were up for the challenge of getting meds out of the health offices and back to families, so that during this time, the meds could be appropriately distributed or given to kids who needed them at that time. And they were also very diligent about contacting families about the meds that were left there in case that got missed or overlooked, because it was quite a stressful time, I think, for families. And so the nurses wanted to make sure that they had the options of either leaving the meds in the health office for when we returned, or making sure that they got home. Our nurses are also picking up shifts at our Kids Stop sites. They are screening everybody who comes in to the sites at Oakview, Weaver, and Edinbrook, I think, is our third one, right? So they are screening, which means that they are taking the temperature and making sure that the people that enter into the building for our Kids Stop sites are healthy. Our licensed school nurses are continuing to do assessments, or starting to do assessments now that we are getting back to some business as usual. So for special ed assessments, our licensed school nurses are working with our child study teams to get some assessments off the ground. Our licensed school nurses have also written out some talking points for our nurses, that as they contact families or as they are contacted by families, that they have some pretty common talking points for things like how to deal with asthma, what do you do with diabetes, or how do you stay healthy in this time frame, even though I think all you have to do is turn on the TV to hear Governor Walz every other minute saying wash your hands and stay at home, which is what we're also encouraging people to do. Our nurses are updating healthcare plans at this time to either indicate things that are going to be beneficial for them at home, or beneficial for when the child or the student returns to our schools. And we are also preparing for next year. So our nurses are looking at the students in their student body and seeing which students will be moving on to the next level. And so they are working on creating the folders for students who are transferring to ensure that whenever we return or however we get back to the buildings, that they will be ready to have a smooth transition for our youth as they transition from building to building, and their medical information will get to the right place at the right time. They're, of course, responding to emails, and as they are being asked, they're reaching out to families. Initially, the thought was that our nurses should contact families and be a person to support them, especially for our more medically needy students. And quickly, I think our nurses were informed that families were getting quite a lot of communication, and that the nurses, while they really value them, that was maybe just a little bit one phone call too much. So they backed off and are now allowing the families to contact them. And if somebody, a case manager or a teacher or a principal, says this family could use a call, they're giving that information to the nurse, and then the nurse is contacting the family. Our district nurse is providing guidance. Melissa is attending the virtual meetings from the Department of Health and any other like Department of Ed meetings that are called to find out and to make sure that we stay informed if we haven't been informed through the other avenues that are available to us, the daily communications that we're getting, and then all the meetings that Superintendent McIntyre uh, present or attends. But she is giving us some information about masks, screening protocols, giving us some ideas for some parent communications, what should be included, and then also providing some input into the registration process. So our nurses are staying busy, and for the most part, they are staying healthy. There are a few nurses who have chosen to take jobs because, like, one of our nurses, the Brooklyn Middle School nurse, is responding to a call from Chicago. So she is taking a leave and going to work at an emergency site in Chicago. But for the most part, our nurses are staying here, staying with us, and working.
Right, thank you,
Superintendent
Kate.
McGuire?
Yeah, so that was one of 4 areas that we're going to have Kate speak to tonight. And the next one is highlighting the work of our special education department and services to students.
Yes, so special education. So at this point, for as of today, in fact, we have the district has 3,269 students who are receiving special ed services on IEPs. 497 of those students are in our early childhood ECSE program, and 64 of those students are in our transition 18 to 21 program. And all of those students have a case manager who has been in touch or tried to be in touch with the family, working alongside Jeremy's team with Learning and Achievement and the Flex Boards, individualizing flex boards for the goals and objectives on their IEPs. So I have been talking with our staff, and they were at first saying, well, how many minutes and how much time and how many days and when should I do that? And the focus of special education at this time is focus on the learner. What does that learner need in order to succeed and make progress on their IEP goals and objectives? So if I talk to anyone, and I talk to a ton of people, and I also sent out communications, the focus is on learnings. So we use the Flexboard template, the ideas from Jeremy's team, and then took those and individualized them at our elementary level. Our secondary, as I think both Superintendent McGuire and Anthony and Jeremy spoke about, were much better set up with our Schoology because they had already planned for our snow days. And now they were much better able to slide into the distance learning. Our elementaries, uh, we had a learning curve, and we're embracing that learning curve. So, and I think that the work that the collaboration with Learning and Achievement has been extremely helpful for that. Our teachers are having office hours where people can reach out to them, families can reach out to them, and they are also reaching out to others. They're developing these individual distance learning plans for all of our students. They're getting materials to them. I'm not sure who's speaking to the materials, but what a great effort that has been to get students the stuff they need in order to succeed on learning for their objectives. Our staff are also ensuring internet connections, being another link in the chain to ensure that we have strong connections between what we think is happening with our technology and what we want, making sure that it's happening. So I was on a meeting earlier today, and this was with a speech staff, Tracy Olenkamp, and she said she got to spend about an hour and a half of her time teaching one of her students how to use Google Meets. So I'm pretty impressed that the people that were struggling today did it within a matter of minutes, because for her with a student, she was walking them step by step. Turn on your computer, lift the screen. Now, what do you see? And then talking them back and forth. But at the end of the hour and a half, she got that child or that student, 11th grader, connected to this Google Meet, and so now that student is now able to participate in the learning, which is a success story. Our child study teams are starting back up. In fact, this week, our due process times are the first week we focused on learning. If I could have said it once, I said it 1,000 times, focus on learning. What does the student need? Now, because it is special ed, we're focusing on due process and what is it that we need to do and ensure that parents are being allowed to, well, they're allowed to participate, of course, in the IDLP process, but in our normal IEP process. So we're having child study meetings, we're having virtual IEP meetings. When we can, we are developing assessments and carrying out those assessments, those evaluations and reevaluations for our staff. Our itinerant staff, our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our speech, have flex sports. They're all reaching out to kids, which is maybe why the nurses were just maybe that one phone call too far. But they are getting involved in the students and their learning and what they need in order to be successful. The ESPs, the staff that are assigned to special ed, thanks to the funding, we are now having the benefit of having our paraprofessional staff, our ESP staff, help in many, many ways. They're helping out at Kid Stop, but they are also helping out with our students. And I've gotten some examples through the meetings that I've attended, just to give you some really good examples of how our ESP staff are stepping up to help kids. They're an amazing staff. So proud of them. They are reading to students virtually. They're assigned to students, so they're doing check-ins with students to see how they're going, to see if there's anything that they need, and so they can be the conduit between a teacher and any of the instruction that they're needing. They're reading tests to students. They're meeting together with students on Google Meet, just having little hangouts. And at first I thought we were going to be able to share some things, because one of our ESPs at Maple Grove Senior High are doing some songs for our staff, most for the students in the skills program, but it was very cute. I'm not sharing it. I'm just saying it's out there, that they are doing some really nice connecting things with our kids. They're making some videos showing students, for example, there's other videos out there, but how to clean, how to cook. I could use that one. And then, as I said, some songs. And I'm thinking that's what I've got to share about special education.
All right, thank you, Kate. So just two areas left here we wanted to cover that are very critical components of our plan, and one of those is around the topic of mental and behavioral supports, mental health and behavioral supports. So could you briefly cover the work that's happening in that arena?
Yes. So mental health in our system is our social workers, our counselors, and our psychologists, although our psychologists most often do assessments at this time and in other times as well. They do support the mental health needs of our students. So what the social workers are doing is they are connecting to students. Social workers in this district who are working with students on IEPs have caseloads. They are reaching out to those families and connecting with them to see what they need, what resources they need, how are they doing, how can they support it. They're doing individual and group sessions with students depending on the needs of the student and the capacity of the student to participate at this time. It is possible a student might have been in a group. That is not, it is, there have been some stories that's not possible right now. So they're meeting the individual of needs on students on their IPs. They're also listening to families and what they need. So probably even as much, if not more so during this time, getting involved with what the families need and how they can provide those resources. If you've had a chance to be on our website, we have some resources, both that Barb Olson and her team have put together and culled from all of the available resources. And our social workers also culled through things and found resources that they thought would be helpful to families. There are, I don't know about you, but my inbox is filled with, have you tried this? Have you tried that? I think Anthony or said about all of the stuff that is out there. So I think our social workers and Barb's team really worked hard to get what is good and reliable and valid supports that are on our website. And when they find something that they are directing the families or this individual students, depending on the age and the needs, to some of the resources or making those connections directly for the students. So they are also doing online lessons with their videoing for later as well. That is in the area of social emotional, along with our district behavior staff. They are doing that as well, developing online lessons that are available for anybody, any staff member to get. And I think we were going to view those and see if some of those would be fun for families to do as well. They're more from a teaching lens, is the one, or it's a couple of the ones that I looked, but I think that parents might find some of them to be interesting and valuable as well. Counselors, lessons from Second Step, and which is our curriculum at our elementary level for social emotional learning and mindfulness. They are doing some lessons, taping those, and distributing them via email for our students like I said, at the elementary level. They are doing individual and some group sessions via Google Meeting, as indicated by the students who have reached out to them or that they're aware of and they're reaching out to them. They're contacting families who are not participating in school or that have that they individual, either teachers or case managers, haven't been able to reach them. So they're joining the team and trying to ensure that everybody that we are aware of are getting connected to our learning. They're helping our students navigate the distance learning by helping some students set up schedules or calendars. As you may know, some people don't require that. Some people have a family schedule or have a schedule that works for them. They have multiple kids. They don't need to be told at 8 o'clock do this, at 9 o'clock do that. They have a schedule that works for them. Others are not like that. Our counselors are uh, finding those that need that support and are helping them to build either a calendar or a daily schedule that will work for them to allow them to access the learning. Like I said, with Tracy, they're either teaching them about the software, about technology, or they're connecting them to somebody who can also teach them about the technology, because sometimes it isn't even the learning, it is the access to the learning that is just a little harder. Our high school counselors continuing to review transcripts. We want our kids to graduate. We want them to get credits. We want them to continue on and have a successful high school career. Our high school counselors are supporting that. They're reviewing the transcripts, getting in touch with kids about needed credits. They're working with new students, finding a family-friendly process for course selection. And they're supporting the PSEO students as needed. Our 504s, every 504, every student who has a 504 plan, the counselors are checking in with that student and seeing if the accommodations are working for them in this environment, or seeing if there is something else that needs to happen or what isn't actually working, and seeing if there's something that they can do to support them at this time as well. As you know, because you gave some money this year, thank you. St. David's Lee Carlson, our co-located mental health people they're continuing to take referrals, and they are continuing to meet with students who are on their caseloads at this time. That's mental health.
Okay, thanks, Kate. And your last area here that covers student services department is how we're supporting our students who are experiencing homelessness. So just a very brief update on the work that's happening there.
Yes. So the homeless, Chrissy Zimba is our homeless liaison. I'm not sure if you've had the opportunity to meet her, but she's fabulous. Our numbers were on on March 16th, we had 531 students who were identified as homeless. And then as of today, we're up to 536. So the question I think Superintendent McIntyre asked was, is this having an impact on us as far as our homeless population? And Chrissy doesn't think so. I'm not sure that this is the total story about our homeless, but at this point, this is our story. The number one issue for students who are homeless is food. So making sure they're getting connected to the meal services that we're providing in the district, or other ways that they can get connected to food if they don't live in our district. She's connecting them, or the homeless liaison at each site is getting them connected. They initially, we were wondering about getting the materials to them, but working with Ron and his team in transportation, they took care of that in a beautiful way, getting materials to students who are homeless wherever they happen to be. Chrissy is meeting, she has a weekly meeting with Roberto Reyes, who is the homeless, I don't want to call him liaison, the contact person at MDE, and connecting with other district homeless liaisons at that time to get ideas, to see what they're struggling with, to see how we can each support each other. Good news, McKinney-Vento grant dollars will be able to be carried forward. Usually it's use or lose. MDE came out and said, no, you may carry them over. So we will fill out the appropriate paperwork, because God knows we don't do anything without paperwork. We'll get that filed and able to utilize any monies that we don't use this year for the ability for next year. What Chrissy is seeing is not so much an increase in homeless, but an increase in the number of students who have been returned from foster care to St. Joe's or to other shelters, that they have been disinvited from their foster care. So that is, but they were already considered homeless. So it isn't an increase in their number. It's just a change in location for those students who are homeless. And Chrissy also let schools know that we can begin or start tutoring. There's funds available for tutoring, and any schools have been asking if they've been able to take care of that opportunity, make that available, and the answer is yes. And so if any school wants to receive tutoring, then we have the funds available for that. She is connecting with Hennepin County and then keeping all of us informed about how Hennepin County is just meeting the needs of students, and how we can partner with them for students that are in foster care, corrections, or suffering due to educational neglect. So we're trying not to let any child slip through the cracks. And that's it for homelessness.
Thank you, Kate. So as you can tell, with all these areas, a lot of effort going into providing supports to students that have unique needs in our system. And kind of along those lines, I want to kind of move us on. Dr. Rev Hillstrom, our Director of Educational Equity, will share information in our plan about how we're supporting our English learners. Rev?
Good evening, school board. Good evening, fellow leaders in our system and community. Thank you, Superintendent. EL, so we have quite a bit going on to support our emerging multilinguals, our multilingual families, and our English language learners in our system. As you know, we've contributed to the district distance learning plan. That's a comprehensive plan that's there. A lot of our work has been around supporting getting documents to our community in a way that is meaningful. And that starts with first translations, but then it moves into oral communication. Many of our folks benefit more from an oral version of that than just a written version. So we've been working aggressively to support our community with getting oral translations or processes available as well. We consistently, through the leadership of Kirsten Nicholson and her team, are working with our EL teachers literally weekly. We have meetings with them consistently, learning what resources they have, what resources they need, and adapting and providing support and direction to support the leadership at the buildings and how they're interacting. We're finding increased numbers of our EL teachers getting more actively involved in their PLCs and helping learn what that looks like. Due to Jeremy and his team providing the first 2 weeks of Flex Learning Boards, we were able to translate all of those into our primary languages and get them out. So that was a wonderful opportunity to kind of get ahead of that, because of a well thought out, organized educational opportunity. we are learning consistently about what needs are still there, and it's unearthing some of the realities that our community, multilingual, emerging multilingual, and EL language learners are encountering that are just very real. And I thank Anthony Paternos and his team and incorporating me in that process to address some of those technology needs and find ways to additionally support. Corey has picked up a Michelangelo phrase that really makes sense, and I hear him use it often. As we know better, we do better, and we have opportunities to do better here because we're learning more daily about what the needs of this community and members within it are bringing to us. And so we're having ears and hopefully creating adaptive solutions to be able to address those needs. And again, we're learning consistently about opportunities to do better. So that would be, I think, the quick version of it. I know there's a lot to go through, and I'll be here, of course, throughout the evening.
Thank you, Rob. And another area of the distance learning plan that we've been paying particular attention to is tribal considerations as well. So could you just speak to that work in our plan?
I can. So as an Indigenous male in this conversation, I want to say wadu to Corey for continually keeping this focused for us as a priority in our system and for district leadership making it a priority. Our tribal plan, our tribal consideration has gone before MDE. It's gone before our Indian Parent Committee, and it's been approved by them. Wonderful opportunities and learnings that I think will bring us, once we're out of this era of learning, and if and when we're out of this era of learning and what we look like in the next, we're learning things about impactful ways of communicating and engaging. We had a parent committee meeting with Robin from Jeremy's team where deep conversations started around what meaningful interactions could look like for collaboration around curriculum and instruction. So that was wonderful, but it was done virtually, I believe, all of it. And there was several people in attendance. I believe we had 8 or 9 folks in attendance, and a lot of times this time of year, we might have a much lower number than that. So that was really well received. And that's guiding some of the other comments that I would have been able to make as it relates to EL. Our Indian families and the use of technology are helping inform us about better ways to inform or impact our EL work as well. So that's an exciting opportunity for that. Curriculum is being designed to support our American Indian students as it is expected through the state legislation, as you know. That's occurring right now. We've been able to even incorporate the beginnings of a language class, which we know was a desire of our American Indian community. So those things are well on their way. So it's a very exciting time in Indian education as we learn how to use some of these distant learning platforms and connect with all our relatives. So it's a very exciting time.
Thank you, Rev, very much. So we'll move on to our next area of our plan, which involves early learning. And I'll have Patrick Smith, Assistant Superintendent, share with you an overview of the work that's happening in the world of early learning.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Good evening, Chair Ostapy, school board members, and my amazing fellow colleagues. We're kind of halfway through our conversation here, and I just got to say, I know I can speak for everybody on this call tonight that I wouldn't rather work with anyone other than this group of individuals for everything that we've been going through. Top-notch individuals, and we're going through a lot of great things together. So there won't be anyone I'd rather be with than this crew. So with that said, I'll go into distance learning for our early learners. The 4 areas I'm focusing on are VPK and Title Pre-K, our ECFE, ECSE, and 4-star. For VPK and Title Pre-K, they're following the same plan as our elementary sites, supporting distance learning for all pre-K through 5 students. This includes flex boards, which were created and sent to students and families. Weekly teacher meetings are occurring on a regular basis. Teachers have daily office hours for students to check in, which attendance has been very good, which they've been very happy about. Teachers have been able to meet with almost all of their students up until this point. The use of Seesaw and Google Meets has been the main means of connecting with their students and families. Positive feedback from parents about activities and support is coming in at a regular basis. At some sites, teachers have created videos to teach and demonstrate activities, as well as focus on learning objectives. Moving on to early child family education. ECNFE is providing optional distance learning to families in ECFE classes and preschool pre-K classes. Teachers are preparing lesson plans and flex learning boards, holding virtual classes, including those for parents and children, conducting virtual or phone home visits, and bringing groups of 3 and 4-year-olds together through Google Meets. Parents are always nearby. You want to make sure that I put that in there. Family support has continued. The tone of support varies from fun family time to critical connections to resources. Children's teachers are calling individual children and sending out videos in order to maintain a relationship and connection to school. According to many parents, watching the videos of the teachers reading and singing has become the highlight of their day. In addition to the larger group instruction, parent educators are also making phone calls to individual families in order to check in and offer support. Support varies along a continuum from helping parents establish home schedules and routines to connecting families with services because of domestic violence. The pressure point for ECNFE is the early childhood screening. In order to meet state statute requirements, we are planning and problem solving ways to prioritize early childhood screening appointments when school doors are once again open. For early childhood special education, delivery of instructional materials continue to be sent to families. ECSC staff have all checked in with families on best ways to provide instruction and support for their individual children. And continuous check-ins and support are being provided to families as we continue on with our distance learning plan. And for 4-star, communication to families around flex boards aligning with the district have occurred. Feedback has included positive comments from family appreciating that they have a tool to engage with their children. Also, if there was a sibling, they gave them the similar experience, which families were very happy about. They have been thankful for all the communication that has come from our 4-star program. Many staff have sent additional resources, such as links, cards, emails, packets, to keep families engaged and connected with them and their students' learning. Additional communication once a week to check in with families is occurring, which includes emails from one of the staff from each 4-star room. This way they can hear from multiple staff members. YouTube video of staff reading a book, and Google Meets is used quite frequently, and the use of Seesaw to communicate with families and students. 4-star conferences or end-of-year check-ins with families will be offered to sites that did not already have them via email or through Google Meets. Also, staff will complete as much as possible of the TS Gold assessment to give us some data for the year. That concludes my summary of our early learning programming.
All right, Patrick, thank you for giving us just a glimpse of what's happening with our early learners. So I'm going to move us on. And one of the first actions we had to take per the governor's executive order was putting in place childcare for our families of emergency workers. And I'm going to ask Brian Severson Hall, our Director of Community Engagement, to share with you the work that's been done. Thank you, Brian.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. As Corey just mentioned, one of the areas that we had to take action on right away was providing emergency childcare sites for essential workers. We are doing that currently at Edinbrook, Oakview, and Weaver Lake. We're open Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. so that those essential workers can access the emergency childcare site. At our sites, we are aligning with guidance from MDE, the CDC, Minnesota Department of Health, and the governor. Kate mentioned one of those ways that we're doing alignment, which is screening for all staff and students as they enter the buildings. Some other things that you might be interested in are we also practice social distancing and group size. So we have the maximum number of students that can attend per site is 50. The maximum number of people we have in any classroom is 10. So we actually assign students classrooms, and that's the group of students that they're with the entire day. So this looks different than a normal out of school time program. So this is an emergency childcare site that's practicing social distancing and small group size. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the wonderful coordination from other departments within our school district to help get this set up. We've had help from health services with nurses, risk management and safety, Our custodial and maintenance teams have been incredible. The amount of cleaning that takes place on an hourly and daily basis at these emergency care sites is astonishing. Food nutrition services helps us make sure that we have meals, which has been great. HR has been helping us with some staffing, and transportation has kicked in because one of the ways that we serve these families is if they don't have a way to get there, we provide transportation. So there's been multiple departments that have helped get this set up. I also want to say thank you to Jeremy and his team for working with us, because we've given guidance to our staff who are working at that sites to ensure that students get help with their distance learning plans during the day if they should so choose while they're at the emergency care site. I'm also proud of our KidStop 4-star SPOT team who got this up and running the first 2 weeks. For the first 2 weeks, they were the only staff that supported the program. Many long days and hours have occurred in preparation for it, and we believe we've created environments where families and students feel safe and cared for and engaged while they're at the program. Currently, we do offer the programming all day, and currently we staff the kind of 6:30 to 9 and 3:30 to 6 before and after school sections of the day with KidStop 4-star and SPOT staff, and the 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock school day portion of the day is staffed with school day ESPs. So that's where we've gotten some support from Laurel and Joel and the HR team. We have served a total of 166 students at this program so far. 89% of the students come from families whose parents work in Tier 1 essential services. There's no way I can encompass the entire list, but that is mainly kind of your healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, first responders. And the other 11% of our students at emergency childcare sites are from Tier 2, and that can include educators, other childcare providers, grocery store workers. So the governor has added professions to the Tier 2 even after this program has started. So just thought that might be of interest to you. 65% of our families are accessing care during the school day portion of the day only. 27% are accessing care for the entire day. And then we have 8% that are kind of doing a mix and match of the two, depending on what hours they're being called in to perform these essential services. So, and on a daily count, we're getting anywhere between 80 and 100 on a daily count. So again, thank you to all of our staff who've made these emergency care sites happen. And then I also wanted to do a quick note with my remaining time about the enrollment center. The enrollment center operations are still going. I'm not sure how many updates we've given on that, but it is up and running. We've created and by we, I mean Jim Greeley and his team have created a remote enrollment process, and they've developed some new procedures around this. So we have a drop box at the Northwest Family Services outside. Families can return enrollment paperwork and documents by fax, email, US mail, and the drop box. And our second of our 3 lotteries for the year took place a couple of weeks ago, and we approved 334 students for next year in that second lottery. 172 were in-district transfers, 87 were pre-K students, and 70 were students open enrolling into our district. So I just wanted to take a moment to let everyone know that our enrollment center is up and running. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate all the hard work that's happened around childcare with very little time to prepare. So just really appreciate all the hard work that you and your staff have done. Another action we had to take per the governor's order right away was putting in place a plan to provide food for children under the age of 18. This literally happened the very next day. We had food ready on March 16th. So Ron Meyer, our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, will discuss our work for our food service department.
Good evening, Chair Ostaffi, Superintendent McIntyre, school board members, and community members. As Superintendent McIntyre just mentioned, included in that initial governor's executive order, that closed school to plan for distance learning. There was also a provision that required school districts to offer meals to their students during the closure period. So with that, our incredible nutrition service staff, working in collaboration with our transportation staff, changed our meal offering structure virtually overnight. This shift happened in 3 distinct phases that I'll take just a few minutes to address. In the first phase, which was really those first 2 days of our closures, which was March 16th and 17th, our team shifted from a planned hot meal service to a cold breakfast and lunch delivery model overnight. For those first 2 days, we offered breakfast and lunch at every K-12 site while a permanent solution was being developed. During that time, we also did inventory at all of our kitchens to utilize any perishable items as much as possible in our cold meal prep. We wanted to limit our waste as much as possible. All of our staff reported and worked their normal shifts at their regular buildings for those first 2 days. During this initial phase, our team distributed over 2,200 meals for those 2 days. We then moved into our second phase, which started on March 18th, and it was really the next week and a half of school closure to plan for distance learning. We started with offering meals at 13 of our sites across the district, and these sites were selected based on student access across our entire district, but also focusing on our areas with our highest needs, specifically those areas where families qualify for free and reduced lunches at a greater level. In addition to offering free meals at those 13 sites, we also set up a delivery option. Families could sign up for delivery either through an online form or by calling into our food service office. We utilized our school buses and our drivers to make those deliveries, and it was a really successful collaboration between our nutrition service team as well as our transportation team to put this whole process together. While only a few of the families utilized this delivery option initially, based on our most recent data, we have 156 families and 686 meals being delivered each day. Also during this phase 2 period, we had all of our staff who were able to work. They were scheduled on a rotation to prepare and serve those meals. Additionally, our nutrition service staff was heavily involved in expanding awareness to our community on the availability of these free meals. This included working with the communication team to send out emails and messages, as well as to reach out to apartments and some faith communities to distribute that information. And finally, our staff also sought and secured some food partners, such as Sheridan Story, which has provided thousands of additional meals that our staff has been able to distribute in addition to the meals that the district has provided through the free meal program. From there, our team moved into phase 3, which is our current distance learning time period. During this time, our staff has continued to look for ways to improve the structure and to expand the reach of our free meal program. This included first altering our staff rotation to keep some of our staff at the sites that they normally were assigned during the regular school year to help them feel a little bit more comfortable, especially with the added stress of having contact with so many families every single day. They also created and executed a spring break distribution program where they prepared and distributed 5 days of breakfast and lunches on the Monday of spring break for the rest of the week. As a result of that planning, we had our highest total of students served, where 2,728 students received meals for the entire week. While all of the day-to-day work is occurring, our staff continues to work to understand new guidance from the Department of Education and USDA to ensure that we get reimbursement for the meals that we are distributing. Finally, our team is planning and preparing for our scheduled return on May 5th, while also being mindful of the potential that distance learning may be extended and making sure that we're limiting our waste of perishable food items as much as possible. Altogether, our nutrition service team continues to answer the call to ensure vital food is in the hands of those families that need it each and every day. We are extremely proud of the Director of Nutrition Service, Jeff Ansorge, and his entire team for the exceptional work that they have done and continue to do for the students and families in our community. And that concludes my update around our work with Nutrition Service.
Thank you, Ron. And I just want to echo what you said. Really proud of the hard work that had to happen literally overnight. It continued to improve on the delivery models and distribution of food, and really the hard work that has been started to get the information out as widely as possible, and to work with our, I think you might have covered this, but working with our city leaders and others in the community to help share information moving out the food supports that are available to our students. So thank you very much. And kind of on that topic, we'll transition to our community outreach efforts that align to what Ron was talking about. We put together a team to help focus on specific outreach efforts, and I'll have Patrick Smith, Assistant Superintendent, give you an overview of that work.
All righty, I'm back. To look at what Ron spoke of, and Brian and Anthony and Jeremy, all those different resources and services, we knew we needed to convene a group that would be able to pull that all together and have a community outreach plan to share those resources with our community. So a community outreach group was created, and we met 4 times to date, a couple times in March and now twice in April already. Our work, we worked across multiple departments to ensure we had multiple voices, which included DLTL, Department of Educational Equity, HR, Publications, Transportation, Business Services, and I2T2. We met with local agencies as well from Maple Grove and Brooklyn Park on March 24th in order to collaborate our efforts to support our communities. A community outreach plan was created on March 20th, which included a flyer to be distributed across the communities we serve. The flyer includes resources in the following areas as mentioned previously: childcare, free meals, distance learning, and community resources. Flyers were also translated into multiple languages, including Spanish, Hmong, Somali, and Vietnamese. Facebook pages were also created by DOEE in order to support the following communities: Spanish, Hmong, Somali, Vietnamese, Indian Ed, and West African. All links to these Facebook pages were added to these flyers. Flyers were handed out to thousands of families and students on Thursday, March 26th and Friday, March 27th during the materials distribution and locker cleanout days. Additional flyers were handed out by ESPs when elementary material bags were delivered to homes Monday, March 30th. On March 27th, we refined our plan to specify locations for flyer distribution. With the help of first student drivers and ESPs, flyers were delivered during the week of April 1st through the 6th to 72 community locations throughout the cities we serve, which includes apartments, gas stations, grocery stores, pharmacies, banks, and retail stores. Additionally, flyers were posted in 8 different bus depot locations. Electronic flyers were sent to local churches to be shared with their congregations. Flyers were also sent out to other community leaders such as SEEP, HAP, Global Fatherhood, AIS, Solid Ground, Ottawa, Down the Street Nutrition, and Chisler's Barbershop. And activities coordinators also shared the flyers with youth groups throughout our system. The community outreach group last met on April 9th in order to summarize our work to this date and plan for any future needs this group would be able to support. The following are areas we discussed: determine what additional churches to get electronic flyers to. So in other words, what churches have we missed? Post signage in ethnic epicenters, for example, an ethnic grocery store. Principal outreach, we're having our principals reach out to their families, and we want to find a way for them to be able to share these resources with their families when they do those messages. What will meal offerings and childcare need to look like heading into the summer? And continue to send messages via email, phone, etc., in multiple languages moving forward. Those are all things that we are considering as we move forward. And that concludes my summary of our community outreach work. Back to you, Corey.
Thanks, Patrick. And I just want to kind of stress the theme there is, as we continue to learn more and get additional input and feedback from our stakeholders, our community members, our families, will continue to identify new ways to share the information. But you can get a sense for the efforts made here in the first couple of weeks of getting the word out about what we can offer. Over the last, as you've been listening to all this information, board members, you can imagine the tremendous amount of communications that needs to support all this work. And I want to have Barb Olson, our Director of School and Community Relations, share information about our communication plan. Barb?
Thank you, Corey, and hello, board members. I'm going to share some examples of work under each of the 4 goals of the district communications plan related to COVID-19 and the distance learning period. Those 4 goals are to ensure that employees and families have timely and factual information about the district's preparation for and response to COVID-19 and distance learning, to ensure that employees and families know about services and resources available to them, to ensure that families who speak Hmong, Somali, Spanish, or Vietnamese at home have access to distance learning related communications in their preferred language, and to reassure employees and families that we care about them and their children and want to support them during challenging times. You know from previous conversations with me that any communications plan I write involves multiple communication channels. In this case, examples of channels we're using include the use of broadcast phone and email messages, staff and parent newsletters, print materials, social media, US mail, local media, the public website, and the employee intranet. I'm also in touch with city administrators to make sure they remain informed about our work. Each of those tools is chosen for a reason. Broadcast messages like phone and email are the fastest way to reach staff and families directly. Social media reaches many families and others who may know families in our district and can reinforce messages around opportunities such as free meals. We sent a letter by US mail to make sure key information was available to families who may not have email or an accurate phone number in our records and therefore may not have received any of the previous communications. And we're pursuing public service announcements in local media in English, Spanish, and possibly Hmong, just in case families have not yet received information directly from us. Using a variety of communication tools helps achieve the first goal regarding timely and accurate information about the district's response. Participation numbers in the meals and childcare programs and web analytics regarding community resources show that we're making progress on the second goal around awareness of resources. Our distance learning plan website has had nearly 20,000 hits since it launched on March 25th. Other frequently visited pages within that section, so in addition to the distance learning page, are in this order: meals, community resources, attendance, and communications to families. For the third goal regarding translations, out of 14 separate communications that my office has assisted with since March 12th, all but 2 of them were provided in 4 languages other than English: Hmong, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. All of these communications, including audio files of the phone calls, can be found on the district website. Another message was just sent out tonight and is out for translation as well. And I cannot say enough wonderful things about our outstanding team of bilingual staff. They have been working in overdrive for several weeks, and I am extremely grateful to have them as resources on our staff. I think they provide immense value to our system, and I cannot imagine doing this work without them. The final communications plan goal has to do with staff and families knowing that we care about them and their children during these challenging times. One way we communicate that is by providing evidence of action. One of my favorite examples is Miss Ann, an Arborview ESP, who creates a video birthday greeting for each child in her classroom whose birthday is taking place during the distance learning period and can't be there to celebrate in person. You saw other examples in photos posted in district social media of the loving messages that staff drew on sidewalks and posted on windows when students came to pick up materials in late March, along with comments from parents in response to those messages. And last night, through our We Listen email address, I believe Corey forwarded it to you, we heard from a Birch Grove parent who reached out to thank staff for all the efforts being undertaken. She is noticing multiple forms of support being provided and wanted us to know that we have helped her family. I do want to highlight a couple of communication challenges. The first is connecting with families whose contact information is either missing from or incorrect in our student information system, or who may have accidentally blocked our broadcast messages. The US mail letter invited parents to contact us if they are not receiving district emails or phone calls, and we've received a little more than 30 requests to update contact information. So that's a challenge, and it's become an opportunity to update information in our records. Translations are also a challenge because they take time. Typically, we send messages in English to all families first and then follow up with the translated versions when they become available, which can be anywhere from a day, possibly same day, a day to a week later, depending on the length and the complexity of the message. But I want to emphasize that while translation work will always be challenging, it is absolutely essential, and it is helping ensure that all families have access to information. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you so much to you and your team for everything that you outlined. And I just want to highlight another piece of your willingness to adapt and adjust based on feedback we get, and continually trying to do a better and better job all the time of making sure we're reaching as many as we can. So I appreciate your willingness to continue to just find new solutions to the challenges we're facing moving forward. I did want to, we have two sections left here as we transition into the distance learning period, as we kind of moved into this area of our work. Board members, you can imagine the implications for supporting our employees and the work that's needed through our Human Resources Department. So I wanted Laurel Anderson, our Executive Director of Human Resources, to share with you some of the key elements of the work her department's doing.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening, board members. The work that Human Resources has been engaged in during distance learning has been focused on collaborating with site and department leaders, along with our union leaders, to provide resources and support to help our employees be able to focus on student learning. Tonight, the information I'm going to provide breaks it down into 3 focus areas. The first is resources and guidance that we've been able to supply for employees. We've worked collaboratively with our labor leaders to create an HR FAQ that's related to COVID-19, and we're working to continually update that document on My 279. Some of the information that's included in that HR FAQ includes resources for coping with anxiety about COVID-19 for employees, guidance for employees about what they should do if they can't come to work and corresponding leave options. We've included substitute teacher plans and how we will utilize our continuous subs to fill in for short-term absences. We've provided resources regarding best practices for working remotely, and we've shared resources about how staff can support children if children have anxiety about COVID-19. Our work also has been including navigating a new leave process. The Family's First Coronavirus Relief Act was enacted effective April 1, and it entitled employees different leave options for absences due to COVID-19 related reasons, and that included childcare. We've also been working to staff, as you heard from Brian, all 3 of our childcare sites for children of essential workers from that 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. period. We've been working with our labor leaders to determine the teacher evaluation process in a distant learning environment, and we just received guidance from MDE last week. So we'll be meeting with our ATPPS steering committee at the end of the week to make determinations about how we'll move forward with teacher evaluations. We are working to support our leaders and how they will create their staffing processes and do interviews virtually. We've been working to create memos of understanding so that we can continue the work of distance learning. Even though some of our practices may be in conflict with our current practices, we need to modify these practices so that we can best support our students and families and our staff. And then in addition, we have a new ESP mentor grant, and so we were able to do some training and deploy those ESP mentors even during distance learning. The second area of focus we've been working on are opportunities for employees. So this winter, we came to you about a plan for de-escalation training for our ESPs, and we believed that we were going to have to do that de-escalation training development in the summer. So we took this opportunity and we worked with our district behavior support specialists to actually start creating that training right now. That training will be developed for in-person training so that we have it ready in the fall. And then they're also developing an online refresher course that we can actually do before the summer if necessary. As you heard from Kate Emmons, there are a number of opportunities and activities that our ESPs are engaged in, but we've also been working with other leaders to develop professional development opportunities and additional work for our hourly staff. KidStop employees now have a plethora of opportunities for professional growth and development, including webinars, videos, podcasts, books that their team has been working on. Custodial services, when they're not in the buildings doing our maintenance work, they are being trained on additional standards for cleaning. And then our ESPs, who are not working directly with staff to support student learning, have been given opportunities to do professional development, both through Education Minnesota training, as well as our Safe Schools training. And I just want to highlight a couple of pieces of information related to that Safe Schools training. Prior to the school closure, so from the beginning of the school year up until March 16th, ESPs had completed 392 supplemental courses on Safe Schools. Since the school closure, they have completed 3,008 courses in just under a 3-week period. I call them supplemental courses because they're not required. We do have some required courses on Safe Schools. So these are chosen by ESPs, and they've engaged in over 3,000 training modules in less than a 3-week period. And finally, we have ongoing transition work that we're working on in HR. We need to determine if we need to adjust our evaluation process for our hourly employees. And we're working to develop virtual recruitment strategies, a virtual job fair. And then we also want to support our hourly employees and provide technical support for applicants that used to come into HR and have somebody there to help them fill out applications. We're going to figure out a way to do that virtually. So to summarize, HR is continuing to provide service to employees as we have in the past. We're just using different methods to communicate and respond, and we're very proud of the work that we've been able to do to support our employees and our families.
Thank you, Laurel. I just want to echo one of the things you said, that I appreciate the partnership you've had with our union leadership in developing supports for our employees. That has been a collaborative effort, and I appreciate everyone working together to support all of our workers. Lastly, with the move to distance learning board members, one of the implications that have been currently and future implications is our work on our district budget. So Ron Meyer, our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, will share with you the information he and his team have been working on since the start of our closure and distance learning plan. So Ron, thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening again. I would like to start our budget conversation this evening with some context. As you all know from our extensive budgeting process, our district has historically taken a conservative approach to finances and to budgeting. We have been deliberate and intentional about not adding budget capacity without a long-term strategy to fund the proposal. We have also been very conservative in our projection model, which forecasts our financial situation into the future and helps us to make good long-term decisions. While this conservative approach can sometimes be frustrating at various times, it has positioned us as well as can be expected for the current crisis we are faced with. We have a healthy fund balance, which will give us flexibility, as well as to cover any cash flow challenges now or into the future. Also, because of our conservative forecasting, we are better positioned to withstand any lack of funding increases from the state that could occur with an anticipated decrease in tax revenue into the future. With that being said, we do have and are anticipating financial challenges with our school closures and our shift to a distance learning model. Our finance team, working closely with our budget managers and our department leaders, have been actively engaged in trying to understand the impact across all of our operating funds. Throughout the school closure and shift to distance learning, the governor and the Department of Education have maintained their commitment to funding schools at the anticipated level they were at before the COVID crisis in our general operating fund. This includes not only the per pupil funding formula, but also the state categorical funding like special education. We have also been given assurances that we can anticipate federal funding, such as our title funds, will be maintained. While there are some small revenue areas that we do not anticipate realizing, such as our parking fees and donations and activity fees, ultimately, most of our general fund revenue should come in as budgeted and expected. On the general fund expenditure side, we are anticipating some savings in a few areas. Without students and staff in buildings, we anticipate our utility costs will go down, or depending on how long our students and staff are at home. Also, there are a few instances where overtime or substitutes will be needed for hourly staff in our distance learning model. This will create a savings in both of those budgets. While not a savings directly related to COVID, we were fortunate in our winter weather this season, and we will be having some savings in our snowplow budget as long as we don't get any surprise May snow showers. Finally, our largest contractors for the district are our bus companies. The governor and the Department of Education gave us guidance to collaborate with contractors to compensate them if they are willing to pay their employees. This is especially important for our bus drivers as we still find ourselves in a driver shortage. We have worked with our yellow bus contractor as well as our van contractors to come to agreement to pay them less than their normal daily rate based on a decrease in things such as fuel and maintenance and wear and tear of their vehicles during this closure. So with that, both vendors have been assisting with our deliveries for instructional materials as well as our meals. It's important to note that for the expenditure budget in all of our operating funds, that another expectation from the governor is in his initial school closure executive order was for school districts to ensure that hourly workers were paid and were part of the distance learning plan that was established. Our team has worked hard to include our hourly employees in our plan and to find creative ways to use them as they work from home or as they report to individual sites. While there are savings in overtime and substitutes, as I mentioned earlier, the bulk of the regular salaries for hourly and salaried positions have continued. So in summary, while there will be some small additional expenses for the implementation of the distance learning plan, our finance team anticipates that the general fund expenditure budget will come in less than budgeted and approved by the board in the mid-year budget in February. The total amount under budget will depend on the length of our distance learning program, whether we come back on May 5th or whether it's extended further into the spring. While general fund revenue looks to be insured, our school district, as well as school districts across the state, are looking closely at the loss of revenue in our fee-based programs, specifically in the community education and the nutrition service fund. The nutrition service fund collects most of their revenue from the sale of meals. While we continue to receive revenue for the free meals that we are distributing that we talked about earlier, it pales in comparison to the number of meals that we serve on a regular basis. While our revenue will be much less than budgeted, our finance and nutrition service teams believe we can maintain our current operation without any financial assistance from the general fund. Before we entered this crisis, our food service fund was actually carrying a higher fund balance than is allowable from the Department of Education. So our plan was to purchase additional capital equipment items as part of our regular replacement cycle to bring the balance down to the approved level. Because of our team's quick analysis, we paused the purchase of that equipment. We also have a significant decrease in our food costs, which is another main driver to our expenditure budget. With those factors, we believe we will be able to continue the operation in our nutrition service fund and still have a healthy fund balance at year end. The community service fund is highly reliant on fees from programs, including our before and after school care. With the school closure and the requirement from the governor to offer childcare for emergency workers for free, we are anticipating a decrease in our revenue for each of our restricted and our unrestricted community ed funds. Our community ed team has identified several areas of savings on the expenditure side of the ledger, including overtime, substitutes, and some program staff. While the governor's executive order does not preclude districts from making staffing reductions for programs without a dedicated funding mechanism, our bargaining group contracts create a significant challenge for our district to do so, especially without potentially having a negative impact on students in the classroom. Additionally, with the prospect of returning to school on May 5th, it is imperative that our staff that our staff are prepared and ready to report to the sites at that time. Thus, our plan has been to continue the regular operation and staffing in all of our funds. While the decreases in the community ed fund expenditures help offset the overall financial impact of the loss of revenue, we do anticipate the need for an end of the year transfer from the general fund to the community education fund to continue the normal operations of that department. The amount of the transfer, again, will depend on the length of time of the school closure and the inability to offer community education programming during that time. Keep in mind, as we discussed a little earlier, we do have anticipated savings in the general fund, and we believe that the savings there will be more than enough to cover the amount needed for the transfer to the community education fund. And likely, we will not need to use any general fund balance to cover these costs. Typically, unless we were expecting to exceed our expenditure budget, we would not bring a revised budget back to the board after our mid-year budget in February. However, because of how many budget elements are still up in the air, and because of the drop in revenue in our nutrition service and our community education fund, and the likely need to do a fund transfer to support our community ed fund, our plan is to bring a second revised budget to the school board at the May board meeting. By that time, we are hopeful to have a much clearer picture of the impact for our current fiscal year, as well as potential impacts for future years. We will continue to monitor any legislative action that could have an effect as well. If board members have direction and guidance as it relates to our plan to continue operations and staffing levels as is, Corey will offer some opportunity to do so later in the agenda tonight. I want to thank our entire finance team, from Kelly Benusa to Mike Kuehler and Cindy Brown to the rest of the team, for their hard work and their diligence at keeping up with all of the changes that seem to be happening on a daily basis, and the updates that are coming from the Department of Education at both the state and at the federal level. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, while these are challenging times, we are as prepared as we could be to face the challenges and move forward in a positive way. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Corey.
Thank you, Ron. And I agree. I'm grateful. I know our board is as well, for the exceptional talent we have in our finance team. And they were just recently recognized once again for their hard work. So thank you very much to you and your team for continuing to work hard on all the changes that have come our way. Before we get to school board comments, questions, and any additional information that might be wanted by board members, I just want to make a few closing remarks. So over the last, let's say, hour and a half, it's been a lot of listening, a lot of information sharing regarding really the 15 key elements of our district distance learning plan and the sheer comprehensiveness of the plan that's been put together since March 15th. Well, during this pandemic, the communities we serve and the values they have been tested. And it's hard not to feel a bit shaken by the confusion and anxiety and fear that can come with it. But we're also feeling a strong sense of community and a collective commitment to getting through this. The COVID-19 pandemic is disrupting life as we know it in so many ways, but I know we'll persevere and eventually get through this. In the meantime, our team has really felt this way. We must continue to be united and support one another. As you can see tonight, there are many reasons to be extremely proud of our staff, students, and families. As a school family, we will continue to demonstrate compassion and care for our students, our families, and to each other as we continue to navigate the serious global health challenge and everything it's bringing our way. The effects of the pandemic will affect us for a long time, and that may include well into next school year. Districts have not yet had time to think deeply through planning through the summer, much less next fall or long term. That's coming. Our district's strategic and operational plans will need to be modified. Frameworks will be essential tools to help us navigate processes, increase clarity, ownership, and unity in our system. Moving forward, staff will undertake critical work in evaluating and assessing our needs, designing and planning to meet those needs. As we do this work, we're embracing the challenges to serve, teach, listen, and communicate. And as I said earlier, I'm so proud of all of the staff across our district. I believe in each and every one of them, and truly believe that we will continue to rise to the occasion. Lastly, we want to thank our students, families, our employees, and our communities. We see you, we hear you, and we will get through this together. So that concludes our sharing for this evening. Thank you so much for maintaining your attention. Board members, our team welcomes your comments and questions and additional information or follow-up information you might want us to bring back to you. So I'll do my best to facilitate that through our Google Meets process here, and our team members are available for comments, questions, and anything else you would like. So I'll kind of open it up for our board members.
Hi, it's Jessica here. Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, each of you, for all your work organizing in such a large system. I will just give a parent's perspective, and that has been, I have felt supported as a parent, especially a single parent to 3 kids in, multiple schools. So I thank you to all your teams at all our sites, the incredible organization, and continue the good work. Kate Emmons, I just wanted to say that I've had a phenomenal experience with the special education team at the Osseo Middle School, especially in particular the 7th grade team, Marin Iozo and her team. We transitioned to an electronic or virtual EIS meeting, and that went very well, and I was so pleased with that process. So just as a parent's perspective, thank you once again for all the work and dedication to our families and students.
Thank you, Jessica. Other board members?
Can I add thank you to that? Thank you, Jessica. That's really good news. And if I can, I'd like to be able to pass that along to that team. Your praise along to the team. Kids, are you okay with me doing that?
Yeah,
awesome.
That's great.
Thank you. Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you so much.
Hi, I have a couple of questions, statements. So I am a member of a support group for parents who are educating their children at home during the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are a number of parents who, I don't know what district they're from, I didn't ask, but who are having trouble with internet. And their schools have given them alternative options to use the internet at home. However, those options aren't working. So they're having to pile all of their kids into their vehicles and park in school parking lots to be able to access consistent Wi-Fi. And so my question is do we have people in our buildings or near the buildings that would see this happen and be able to reach out to those families directly to help them get adequate internet set up, or maybe have their assignments sent to them on paper? Because some of these parents, they have like 4 or 5 kids and their toddlers and their babies, and then they've got their 3 older kids on their Chromebooks trying to work all in a minivan in a parking lot. And so my question is, do we have people in buildings who would notice if a family was sitting in a parking lot as their only way to access the internet? And if the answer is yes to that, how can we better support those families so that they don't have to sit in the parking lot for hours with all of their children just to get internet access? So that's my first question. I'm just going to ask a few questions and I'll let you guys answer so that I can not be the one talking. So that's one question that I had. Another question that I had is about the staff who are not able to work because we don't have anything for them to do right now, and they're part of the programs that are self-funded. And so my question is, have we found other ways to can we find other ways? Do you have any ideas about what we could do to utilize those staff more effectively in this situation because I'm concerned about that, but I also know that the morale and the impact to our community would be catastrophic if we were to have to lay off any of those people who aren't working. And so I just want to hear more about what our thoughts are around that and how we can better serve both our staff and our students with those employees. So those are my questions.
Thank you, Heather. So I think I'll ask Anthony to respond to your first question about the technology issues. Anthony, would you like to follow up with that?
Yeah, I don't have a really good answer for if we've had staff in buildings that would identify if somebody's sitting in a parking lot connecting in. However, my team, and we haven't run this report yet, but we would be able to tell if our wireless is being used because we did all our access points on the outside of our buildings or in the classrooms or on the outside of the buildings. We did crank up the radio broadcast on them to allow that as an additional resource as we're trying to connect all our families to the different resources that we can within homes. Our process for identifying that 291 families, so that's not the number of students, that's how many families, so we've got groups of students that are in those homes, is as we did our first week of distance learning and teachers were reaching out and making those initial contacts with students via phone, Google Meets. The expectation is if they hadn't heard from a student within 2 days or saw them engaged, they were making some calls home to try and figure out what's going on. Part of the information we were gathering during that first week time period as they were making those connections is who didn't have access. So that is all the data that we've had reported back to us as teachers were making those initial contacts out to our families. But in terms of trying to identify who might be utilizing the parking lot in our schools, that's something that we can dig in further in terms of who might be in the buildings, unless it's a site that's providing emergency care. There's not many staff in those buildings unless it's, we've got something going on. Like this week, we've had some staff come into each of the elementary sites to do curriculum prep for distribution of our next round of curriculum. At the elementary level, in particular with the flex boards, the design from the beginning was to be able to create a curricular resource that may not need the access to technology because we didn't have the technology that was in that space yet. So that's why we still have curriculum distribution happening. Families that we've identified as needing that and not having internet access still, we are delivering those hard copy materials. Those will be going out on transportation on Friday for the next 2 weeks worth of materials. And at the secondary level, as we did with our e-learning day for inclement weather, teachers are working individually with students and making accommodations if they didn't have access during that time period. So all of our teachers should be providing an alternative pathway for students if they don't have that internet access for some physical material and learning opportunities. And we're going to continue to monitor that number and get more students and families connected, because we know when they have the digital resources, we can create a much richer and differentiated learning experience for our students than sometimes just the physical content that can go out.
Great, thank you, Anthony. And I think, Heather, for your second question, I'm just going to put it out there to Brian and maybe even Laurel and Ron if they want to add any comments, but it seems like it could be something Brian may want to address because it felt like you're sort of getting at the community education areas, those fee-based program areas. So Brian, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, I can take that question. So some of it depends on the program area. So for instance, on the KidStop Spot and 4-Star program that's still involved in the emergency care sites. Right now we have all of our staff on a rotation. So for instance, if you're a staff person who typically works a split shift, 4 hours a day. You're scheduled for, it's a 3-week rotation that's going on right now. You're scheduled for your normal amount of hours for 1 week on site. And then the weeks that you're not on site, those are the weeks that you can take advantage of things that Laurel already mentioned, like professional development opportunities, working on your annual goals. So that would be how I would answer. So all of our KidStop ESPs, instructors and lead instructors are working their normal hours they would normally work in a day for 1 week rotation out of a 3-week rotation. Of course, our program managers and KidStop coordinator, they're working their normal 8-hour plus days because they're managing the sites during those whole that whole time period.
So I just have a couple follow-up questions then on that. So how many staff members are on this 3-week rotation where they're working 1 week and then the other 2 weeks they're doing self-improvement or PD type things? How many people are in that
200.
category, and how many people are utilizing and really actually doing the PD, and how long is that taking them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are 200 ESPs who are currently in the rotation, 30 ESPs who have received approved leave of absences during this time. We've actually had 6 people resign because they don't want to be at a site that is serving children of emergency services staff. And then we have 14 lead instructors, and then you've got your leadership team of 7. So, like 250 people. And so far, we've started tracking the professional development offerings, because what we do is we have people write a summary of their learning, and we've currently had 331 postings from the 200 ESPs. So some people have taken 3 modules, some people have taken 1 module. That's what we've collected so far.
So are you able to determine who has not done any? Is there anyone who hasn't done any?
I'd have to look that up, but I would think there probably are people who haven't done any.
Okay. And the professional development that they're doing, what kinds of professional development are they focusing on?
Yeah, we have a 3-page document. Some of it's on things like quality and out of school time, programs. Some of it's around behavior. Some of it's around refreshers for first aid and CPR that's required for people. So refresher courses. So there's a whole gamut of choices.
So something that I was thinking about is that if we have a number of staff who are unable to fulfill their normal duties because of the COVID shutdown, and they're left with a lot of time to do professional development, and as a district, we've made trauma-informed practices and mental health a priority, if we could possibly be putting an emphasis on the staff who are able to really do a lot of extra work in those areas, do that, because the more people who have the knowledge and understanding of how trauma-informed practices work, the better we'll be able to serve our students in the future.
I think that, Heather, you bring up a fantastic point in terms of how can we advance the skill sets of the people in our organization during this time that may not be able to perform their normal duties. So I think, I know everybody's working hard at different ideas and innovations. I just echo that and encourage that it's a tremendous opportunity to advance our skill sets for a lot of our folks.
And follow up to that, with the number I'm sorry, I wanted to follow up, Heather, real quick with one of yours, and then I'll wait. But how many hours does those 331 postings uh, come to? How many hours of training across those 250 people were done in the last 3 weeks?
Sure, I'd have to get back to you on the exact number of hours. I could look. I have it pulled up. Oh, and I also just got a text. So those who have not submitted items thus far are getting phone calls and support from their supervisors to get on and get to those resources.
Do we know why they're not doing it? Like, are there extenuating circumstances, or, other things going on? Are we able to help break down barriers for people who are unable to do that kind of professional development?
Sure. I know, Laurel, do you have anything to add to that? Obviously, I'm not the only department that has ESPs. So.
Yeah, I know that with our ESPs that are at sites, they have iPads, so they have devices, the technology that they can use to access these online tools, these training opportunities. I can't say the same for all the Kids Stop instructors. So that might be a barrier that your team, Brian, wants to research some more. We've had some information about just how do I get on? How do I log on? And so HR has reissued that information about how to log on to the Safe Schools. What are the recommended courses, including trauma-informed practices, de-escalation skills, and we've done that in collaboration with Becky Hespin. So it's coming from two venues, HR as well as their union leaders. So trying to get the word out in as many ways as possible.
Just to clarify, I think, Brian, you said that they're being reached out to personally. You said you got a text message. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And so far, our two highest feedbacks on not being on is exactly what Laurel said: lack of internet and lack of device. They're not automatically given a device because they work at a before and after school program.
So then I guess I would ask Anthony, is it possible to get them devices? Can we deploy devices to these people so that they can do the professional development?
So we're at a point where we're starting to get pretty tight on the tech resources we have to continue to do the mobility, but we have provided the opportunity, if a staff member does not have the access, that they can work with their supervisor and access our buildings to get into the technology that they need. We'd still be practicing social distancing, but we can spread employees out between our spaces in order to accommodate their needs if that's warranted.
I have two district issued devices. When I became a board member, I was given a laptop and an iPad, and I have my own laptop. I would be happy to have them redistributed to somebody who could better use them. I don't need to use it. I can use my home computer, if that would help to make sure that these staff members have what they need.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to turn a device in, we're happy to collect that and redistribute it. I would still encourage board members to keep at least one district issued technology if you're doing board work and communication on it, just so you're not having that work crossing into personal technologies.
Sure.
Okay, first of all, I would like to definitely thank everybody who's put in such a tremendous amount of effort. I know we're all learning together really quickly, and from my own personal experience with my colleagues, I understand the difficulty of trying to do our jobs still to the fullest extent that we are able to with our own kids at home, teaching them and our own littles. The folks that have the little ones, I know it's really tough. So um, I'll try to keep it to the most salient questions because I would have many different questions, as I think anybody watching would. Um, So, do we have benefits for time off? I know my employer, just the reality of trying to work from home with littles at home. Are we offering and making sure that our people know about time off benefits that they might need to take advantage of?
So Tanya, there were new provisions that were included in the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act that allow employees to take time that's paid. It's not full pay, but it's 2/3 pay in order to do childcare, and it's considered FMLA. So then they have protections for their position and their insurance. So we have communicated that out, and it's included right at the beginning of our FAQ if staff need to take that time to care for their children or for other family members that might be sick with the COVID-19.
Okay, great. My next question is Brooklyn Park recently conducted a community survey, and one of the significant concerns was from parents, and I think really all parents may feel this same concern and pressure. Um, they felt concerned about being able to help their children with schoolwork. So, what type of mechanisms are in place to be supporting the parents? So, we were doing a lot of student activities, student resources. Is there anything specific directed toward parents? For example, are we encouraging teachers to hold maybe like a once a week parent type of Zoom, Google Meets type of interaction to help parents along or connect with parents?
Yeah, I can take this first, and then Jeremy might have some additional things to add. But one of the expectations with our teaching staff is that they're holding 2 hours of office hours. And the idea behind that is not just student support, but it can be family support as well. So if a parent is calling in and how do I support my child with this? That is the purpose behind those daily 2 hours of office hours that are dedicated for that support to students and parents during that time. I know at the elementary level, many of the elementaries have kind of collated that into a chart and broadcasted that out to their students. At the secondary level, most of those are posted within the Schoology course that the students are taking. So when they go into their Schoology course, teachers have the time period of their office hours in there. I know at the secondary level, there was a lot of strategic work to divide the time up amongst the different subject areas. So one of our learnings from our inclement weather day is that all of our secondary teachers had their office hours at the same time, which made it challenging for students and families to get a hold of them. So those have been spread out between the hours of 9 and 3. So we've asked that all elementary and secondary buildings hold those office hours between the hours of 9 and 3 for families to get in touch with teachers for support.
Can I just jump in and say that as a parent, what I've experienced is a tremendous amount of support and contact at the elementary level. The teachers are reaching out really consistently, and you know, most of you know that we've had, some really hard stuff going on at home, and we've had Zoom meetings with the elementary teachers, and they're really just talking, how are you? How's everything going?
That's great.
And speaking to the kids. And then at the secondary level, I actually just received a notification from Principal Michael Lehan about a Zoom conference specifically for parents, and I was really surprised but impressed that that we got that, because I feel like at the secondary level the communication has been more teacher to student, but at the elementary level I've been getting a lot of direct teacher to parent, almost too much contact. Like I'm continuously getting updates and emails and texts and alerts, which is great. So I know that they're there and they're really supportive and they really care about how all the kids are doing. And then, I've seen the staggered hours, and I personally think our staff is doing a phenomenal job making sure that they're reaching out. And I've seen an emphasis from elementary, well, some elementary schools. I'm a part of their Facebook pages, and they're just like really like take care of yourself, make sure you're doing well in your mental health, take breaks, don't stress about the work. make sure everybody's healthy and safe. And so I feel like they've been really emphasizing that this is hard for everybody, and they're here for us virtually, and they want us to take care of ourselves and not stress out so much about word problems and worry more about how's everybody doing. So anyways, I just wanted to share that that's been my
Yeah.
experience so far.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I definitely have heard many of the stories about a teacher with 172 emails still yet to go in the evening, getting getting ready for the next day, and I just know there's a tremendous amount of effort. So, um, whatever we can do to continue to share the learnings, I know the buildings and the building leadership is getting together, and I hope that we can continue to share those best practices and continue to help supportive teachers as well, so they don't feel like they're overwhelmed with all of that activity as well. Um, the last question I'll ask, and I'll take the rest of them offline. And I really appreciate Superintendent McIntyre, your daily updates and your information that's keeping us informed and responsiveness to questions. But translation, I know that's really, really tough, just the sheer volume of content that needs to be translated. Are the Facebook groups helping? First of all, are they in various languages? That the Facebook groups that were mentioned in terms of supporting our uh, different groups of families, are they in native language, and is that a mechanism that's helping us to be able to communicate efficiently and effectively? And then, kind of piggybacking on that, then w- have we? Are there other outsourced translation services that we can access to help continue to speed that along?
Thank you, Tanya. Barb, would you like to respond to this? We've had lots of conversation about this. It's a great question.
Yeah, I can respond to the second question a bit from my experience, and then if Rev is still on, he can respond to the Facebook question. We have a list of vetted translation firms that our EL department has gone through, and they do vet this list for quality and consistency and responsiveness. I will also tell you from our experience, it is worth the turnaround time tends to be about similar, and the cost is higher to go to an outside firm, and it is worth, even if it takes a little bit more time, it's worth using our in-house staff because they are so fluent in the terminology that we use, and they frankly just do a better job. They even check each other's work. Each translation goes through vetting if there's another person who speaks that language on the team, and the quality is just so much better that it is the best solution given the parameters that we have. That's my experience in working with them, and I'll defer to Rev to talk about the Facebook groups.
Thank you. In our achievement integration plan, we've listed what we call culture/language tables. And this is a virtual adaptation of that. So yes, only are the materials showing up in a translated written form, but we're working through the process of creating oral responses to those. So those folks who are more comfortable with that environment of learning have those as well. So yes, we have it Vietnamese, we have it Spanish, excuse me, we have it Hmong, we have it supporting our West African population and our American Indian population, the groups that we normally would have had. And I believe we also have Somali translation that is out there in other forms. So these are the work that we are doing, both in written and oral translations that are showing up.
Okay. All right, that concludes my questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for all you're doing, and I just really encourage us to take the opportunity to learn from this experience and to create a culture of learning, questioning, sharing what's not working without any type of penalty. Or, we want people to question, we want people to say what's not working, and we want to celebrate what is working. So this is our opportunity to really um, create the culture that we want now and going forward.
Thanks, Tanya. I'll reach out to Kelsey and Jackie and Mike. I think everyone's still on. So would you like to share anything or have any questions?
Yeah, I guess again, I also would like to thank everyone. I also have 3 kids in the district, and working full time, and I mean it's a lot. I mean it's a lot for all of us. What really strikes me, and it's more of a comment I think than anything, is that knowing we're in this kind of uncharted territory, and going into this, we were already facing an incredibly stark achievement gap, incredibly stark. And so I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, the fact that um, we're doing incredible work. A lot of people are, we're being very intentional about really being cognizant of that. And I know the governor is too. He talks a lot about achievement in response to COVID-19. But we also know with COVID-19, it disproportionately impacts immigrant, refugee, families of color, low income, limited English proficiency families more than anything else. And so I'm really happy to hear about the printed material flyer distribution. I think that's going to be really important to even do another wave of that. I know in my position we're looking at that too. And then I also think about, when Kate was talking about our families who are experiencing homelessness, and the fact that foster families have essentially been having their foster children go back to placement. And I'm just, if I loved your kind of pillars, Barb, and if part of it is how much we care and in these troubled times, I mean, what is our role as a district in ensuring these families beyond technology and materials and food is, connecting the dots for families, because a lot of times schools are trusted sources, and it just really stuck out to me around anything. It really broke my heart to hear that. And I'm just really curious of what our response is. And then I also, think about our strategic planning process. And I feel like there's no better time than to really be innovative and to think differently about our education system as it relates to all of our students and families, and particularly our families who face the starkest disparities on all the areas. And so, just how are we, not to answer maybe right now, but to maybe you do have an answer, Corey, but like, how are we incorporating all of this into our strategic planning process moving forward? And then kind of follow up, and you mentioned it earlier, the feedback from people. I know I posted something on my Facebook page, and I had a couple people comment on some just different, suggestions or feedback. And I know Brooklyn Bridge Alliance has a survey out in addition to the Brooklyn Park survey, which is awesome. I'm just kind of wondering the results of the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance that was really focused on youth. And then the last piece of it is with Anthony. I mean, I guess I don't, if we do have families, if there's still families out there who don't have devices, is the answer that, I've heard from several families that, and even my kids have their own device. They don't need theirs. So I just, I'm just curious of like, what is the actual plan, like to ensure that these families have technology access and internet access, the 200 and some that you mentioned. So that's it.
Anthony, would you like to start with that last one first?
Yeah, I can start with the last one first. So we have a really comprehensive plan in place to address I'm going to start with technology first, and then let's discuss internet. So we've got a comprehensive plan in place to address the technology resource. And we're at a place now where every family should have at least one district issued piece of technology in their home. And we have done that through making phone calls, through our distribution day when we first identified them. So what we did first is we made sure all the devices in 4 through 12, which are assigned one-to-one devices, went home. If they didn't get picked up, we made phone calls home to say, hey, we still have your device. Do you need it? Please come and get it. If you can't get it, can we deliver it to you? And then we pulled a list of students in K through 3 who didn't have an older sibling in 4 through 12. So they're only in that K through 3 area, and identified those students to get one piece of technology to those homes. We're now coming around with round 2, as we're looking at, we've got some older iPads in our warehouse. that they can't be updated to the latest version, but they can run Schoology and Seesaw and our other core district apps, as well as access the web. And so our next round of what we're looking at distributing is to families that have multiple students in that K-3 area home that need additional technology to help support them. Because what we've learned since we've done the initial rollout is that when you've got 3 students in K-3, or you potentially had let's say 2 students in K-3 and then an older sibling, when they're all trying to do distance learning at the same time, it's created some challenges to equitably access enough technology within the home. So we've got a plan in place. We have the ability to ensure that families have enough resources. And we've been making direct calls and emails to homes as we've identified students to see, do you need this resource and how can we get it to you? The internet process is it's a work in progress. So our first piece of this was getting resources out to families to know what was out there. So on our district webpage, as well as I made a robocall out to all families, and we did that in all of our core languages as well. We had it translated, we had it voice translated, and went out to identify all the resources that are coming out from Comcast, Spectrum, identifying what mobile carriers are doing. All mobile carriers are providing unlimited data on their plans, so you can switch over to hotspots and use those. They're waiving, if you can't pay your bill, they're waiving that for the next 60 days. Most of the major carriers are. And if for any of our students who happen to reside in Minneapolis Wi-Fi, which is through US or UCI, their Minneapolis Wi-Fi, they've turned that on completely public. So everybody in the city of Minneapolis has access to free Wi-Fi. So we got those resources out and translated into the hands of families, as well as steered families that may have questions about access to our help desk. We've got a quick hotline going on there that goes through those resources, as well as additional questions going to Jen Thomas, my enterprise technology team, and they help support families in trying to connect them with those resources. The second round that we're working on right now, I've been in conversation with Brooklyn Bridge Alliance. They've been working with, Hennepin County, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and the 4 school districts to look at what technology resources that they can support as well. So as we've collected now this data, which just came in yesterday, related to how many families still need the connections, this is where we're trying to strategize around those additional resources, whether it's Brooklyn Bridge Alliance or us as a district purchasing some hotspots to provide to families. As well as Barb notified me today, CCX News is working with Comcast to provide internet connections into homes, I believe in the Maple Grove area. So we're trying to identify a variety of partners. I know Lynn Penke from Hennepin County has been working on some of this and have been engaged on the periphery of some of the early conversations that they've had. So this isn't a unique challenge to Osseo. It's districts across our state are trying to figure out this and triage this. And I'm confident we can rapidly decrease that number in the next week to 2 weeks to get those internet connections in. Again, we're going to continue to probe that data as well, because 291 is what we've been able to identify through our teachers reaching out and making connections. That doesn't mean that there are not unknown internet connection issues that still exist out there. So we have to keep gathering the data and listening to who's connecting and who's not connecting, and triaging what those resources and supports look like.
Thank you, Anthony. So I'm going to ask this again. I think a lot of us here, like people in our district, because wanting to help, in whatever way they can. And so is one of the ways that somebody could help. I've heard from several families that said, asked about returning some of their devices because they have their own devices. I mean, is that something that would be welcomed? Because I just, even I appreciate that we have, you know, other laptops and other technology that, but it's, if, to me, I think we all want to strive to give everybody the best. And so, or what everybody else has. And so, I'm just wondering, is that something that your area would ever put a request out for to people, or no, are you just, is that too complicated or things?
We're welcome to take it, but as I said, we've got enough technology resources to make that. Our greater challenge is the internet. And as we talk about the devices that are in fourth and fifth, yes, are a little better, but they're going to stop updating next fall. That's why we've had the conversation with our DL4A around the refresh of technology at elementary, because of where we're at. So the technology resources, we aren't going to provide any family with a resource that's not going to function well enough to do what we're providing to teachers and encouraging teachers to use in the core of their curriculum, whether it's Seesaw or vocabulary or Woot Math or Schoology. Where some students might run into challenges is, as some teachers are exploring, as Jeremy said, as we're trying to wrap around a lot of the free tools that are out there that teachers are grabbing onto. Sometimes a teacher grabs a free tool and asks a student to use it, and that free tool might not work. Again, we're not necessarily encouraging teachers to grab onto all these free tools. We're trying to keep a good stronghold on that. So if a family is experiencing a teacher using a tool that doesn't seem to be working on a device, they shouldn't get into contact with the teacher and say, hey, this tool isn't working. And then we can strategize and say, hey, do we need to get them a different piece of technology, or do we need to have a different conversation with the teacher and what they're trying to use in their classroom, to steer them to the appropriate resources that will actually work with the tools we're providing.
Can I jump in for a second? I have a couple of questions. So my big concern when we're talking about this specific issue is the equity of our students in their learning. I'm really, really concerned that we have almost 300 students who we know aren't accessing the internet, right? That's what you said? Is that right?
That's not necessarily true. Those families could be accessing the internet, whether they're going to a different public location, sitting in their car, as you had described. They might be finding alternative ways to get internet access, but they do not have internet access in their home.
Okay, so we have 290-ish
291 families, yep.
291 families, not students,
Correct.
who do not have internet access at home.
Correct.
So I don't know if devices still do this or not. You would know. But I remember a long time ago, I bought a Kindle that had like internet in it. Like I could access Kindle books wherever I was. Do we have the ability to do that with some of our electronic devices so that we can get technology in these kids' homes by the end of the week?
Our devices do not have that capacity in them, because in order to do that, you're buying a device with a mobile plan in it. So it's basically like a cell phone that you're building within that technology, and we don't have those purchased.
So I know sometimes places like Verizon, Sprint, AT&T and stuff, they'll sell you a device with a plan attached to it. They have that capability. So are those devices different than the devices that we have? Is there a way to add a plan temporarily till the end of the school year to get these kids internet?
Those devices are different because they have a cellular antenna built inside those pieces of technology, which ours does not.
Would it be possible for us to get devices or hotspots to our families quickly so that they can get learning? I mean, we're nearing the end of the school year, and I'm really concerned, and I know a lot of families are concerned, whether they have internet or not, about completing the school year. But I can imagine it would be much more stressful for someone who doesn't even have access to the internet.
Yes, and as I stated in our strategy, that is one of the options we are currently aggressively exploring, as purchasing hotspots as a district to get families equipped. The challenge with all of this, and whether it's purchasing hardware, purchasing hotspots, the supply chain is pretty tough to navigate right now in any technology realm. So I can tell you, you've got districts who are struggling right now to just get hardware devices because there's not enough hardware to purchase. Vendors don't have them in the warehouse; they're sold out. And when we talk about hotspots, we're running into some issues as well. We've got a strong potential that we can get a sizable number of hotspots in by the end of the week, and we're working on that right now. But we have some things that we gotta navigate through, and I can't provide a confirm update on that. I know we will through Corey's updates as we continue to progress through the conversation, which is why we're looking at a whole slew of strategies on how we can support families. Again, the 291 is what we've identified, and so we're working to address that 291, but we're trying to figure out those long-term contingency plans, because we're going to find, I am assuming we're probably going to find more as we continue to progress and need to have comprehensive strategies in place.
So I just have one more question. If a teacher finds that one of their students does not have internet access, are they required to report that to your team so that you can help manage that situation, or is there a method for that?
Yep, so that's going to be part of the ongoing process that we're developing. So what occurred between the end of spring break and what principals had to submit by 6 p.m. yesterday was they had to gather that data from their teachers, and they provided it in a comprehensive spreadsheet. So we've got a list of everybody that a teacher has identified thus far, and that's the list we're working on now. We are going to develop an ongoing process, so as additional students may be identified, that will be targeted and run through the information and instructional technology team, I2T2, so we can centralize that to get the supports out that are needed.
Thank you.
And Jeremy, with Comcast, I do believe that they have Internet Essentials across our entire territory at $9.99 a month. Is that not correct? Where they have a basic internet service, for families at a very low rate that we may or may not be able to bring into their homes. Has that been explored?
Yep, so that is on our list of resources that we've been advertising for over a month. And that Comcast program is actually waiving the fees for the first 60 days of that plan during COVID-19. One of the challenges with that plan is any family that has had an outstanding, they first have to be a new customer, and if they've had an outstanding bill that hasn't been paid within the last year, they don't qualify.
Anthony, I just read today that they have waived that piece about the fee within the last year to get people access. I just read that on their website today, just so you know.
That is very recent information, because when I looked 3 weeks ago, it was still there.
Yeah, I just read it today, and it was just waived. But also, that really sucks about you have to be a new customer, because if you already have Comcast, I don't know.
The other piece that Comcast has in there, which is why we advertise that right away, is they have to sign up by April 20th. It's somewhere around that region. They've got to sign up by there to qualify. I do know we have run into some challenges with some families that do qualify, have gotten signed up, but Comcast has said it's going to be 2-3 weeks before they can get the equipment and get an installer out to install equipment. So that's another challenge that we have to navigate with these providers, as well as families are trying to get equipped.
I'd like to get us to some questions from Jackie and Mike as well. I know they have some as well. And so thank you for any follow-ups you have. We want to answer those, and hopefully you're getting a sense we are trying to overturn every possibility we can in a timely fashion. And you can all be really good help to us getting information out. So the questions are good. Before I move on, I just want to, in about 20 seconds, address the last two Kelsey asked. Our surveys, we will have a staff, a family, and a student survey, 3 different surveys going out by the end of the week to have those 3 different stakeholders give us feedback on our work so far. knowing that we're in day 7. And then your other question about strategic plan, I've been meeting with Teamworks, and we have already, you are spot on. We need to adjust based on everything that's changed and refine our planning approach. So I've asked them to provide us with scenarios and new proposals on how to move that forward. And my hope is to get that to the board for feedback by the end of the week, if not sooner. Might be as early as tomorrow as well. So we've already been looking out ahead on how this has changed our process significantly. So with that, I think I want to give Jackie and Mike a chance to ask some questions too. And then there's probably some follow-ups that you all have that you can continue to send either to me or to our team members. So Mike or Jackie, Jackie, I think you're still there.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Okay, here I am. I was waiting for you, Mike, because I saw you took off your microphone. This has been a tough time, and as you all know, I'm a teacher, and so I've been on the other end of this, and I know I don't have kids right now going through it, but I remember being home with my kids, and I know how difficult this is for everyone. I want to say that when Rev said that Corey uses the quote, "When we know better, we do better," I have seen that time and time again with this staff and throughout this pandemic, and I'm eternally grateful for all of the people that are truly putting their hearts and souls into making sure that our school family is all being embraced during this time, and making sure that no one falls through the cracks. I know that we're all concerned about the 291 families, and I am grateful for our team working across disciplines to make sure that they have internet access. I also wanted to say that I fully appreciate all the languages and how we're working hard to get information out orally and written. I have a family in my class who doesn't speak English, and she doesn't read in her home language at all. And I didn't even know that because I got to see her on a daily basis and talk to her until a week into our distance learning, when I was trying to help her get on. So I appreciate the multiple modes of communication. It just hit home a little more for me a few weeks ago. I also am excited about the ESP getting training and how we're delivering meals and offering meals. And the one thing that I've been asked a few times is, and I've even gone to deliver packages to people in our district. We have a lot of families with kids that are in early childhood age, but have not been taking advantage of our early childhood programs. So they were in daycares or other preschools, and now they're wanting stuff for their littles to do while their older kids are doing homework. And so I just want to say to the public, we have flex boards up for pre-K, and if they want to utilize that, but I don't know how we can, reach those people with our ECFE program. I also think that we need to collaborate with our ECFE program when we're talking about parent education, and working with parents to help their kids. I just think that would be a fantastic thing. But overall, I want to say I am truly honored to be a part of this district now, and I am just loving the changes that we've made in the last year and how we're just going forward, and with equity way up at the top of our list.
Thank you, Jackie. If you have any additional questions, make sure to pass those on for us too. Mike, you've been patient. Thank you very much.
So thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming through this process tonight. And Corey, thank you and the entire team for pulling this together and the leadership and all the activity that's been going on in the last 3.5 weeks. It's been amazing. It shows in some of the reports coming back from the parents and the teachers and everything that you have shared with us. You're looking at making a very big commitment here with the ESPs and training, and the governor has clearly stated his intention to go past May 4th. I mean, I think we have to plan for that. In that case, what type of financial commitment are we looking to make for the training of the ESPs? Is that $200,000, $1 million, $2 million?
There is no cost to the Safe Schools program, so it's part of their regular work time, so we're not paying anything additional. It's just supplementing the work that they're doing with families. Whenever they possible, they can log on and get that PD.
So how much will we have to transfer from the general fund to cover the salaries for that period?
So this is Ron. If it depends on, we've projected out 2 different avenues. One, if we come back on the 5th of May, and then the other if we essentially close down through the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th. Our projection right now, based on some of the savings that we anticipate for some of the non-salary and benefit items, as well as if we do go through June 30th, we will have some summer salary and benefit savings as well. We're projecting right now that we would need to make a shift from the general fund if we came back on May 5th of around $740,000. And if we come back, if we're closed to the end of the fiscal year, it would be just over $1 million.
Okay, and that includes spending down the fund balance of about $500,000 currently in community ed.
That's correct. We have about $426,000 at the end of our last fiscal year. We had $426,000. So that would be spending that down and then that additional transfer. Now there are still some things up in the air that could impact that. For instance, in Representative Dabney's bill that's in the House right now, there is the potential of doing some fund transfers. There's some language right now for fund transfers, but it's specific to additional costs for childcare or transportation. So it doesn't really fit for our situation. However, Representative Dabney's bill gives some greater flexibility with fund transfers. So potentially, if there is that flexibility, we could look at doing some transfers from some of our restricted funds in community ed, such as school readiness or our early childhood family education funds.
Speaking with our elected House members and Senate members, I know there was hopefully going to be a bill put forth today in the Senate and the House to vote on for the governor to cover through the state the additional salaries of that extra $1.4 million that we would have to incur to keep everybody employed. Did that vote happen? Did the governor seek to cover that, or is that not something that he's interested in?
I don't know of a bill at this point. I spoke with Valerie yesterday that would specifically fund community education. However, there is a Senate bill that's not an equal companion bill to the House bill, but that is in the Senate. And actually, Brian is going to be testifying just in terms of the experience for Osseo at that Senate hearing tomorrow. Again, there's still some discrepancies between the two bills that they are working between the House and the Senate to try to come to a bill that they can agree on that then can go to the governor. But at this point, it doesn't necessarily, there's some language clarification to ensure that we, again, get all of that general fund dollars that we were planning on. And then there's some of that language as it relates to fund transfers. But as far as I know at this point, there has been no proposals to actually fund those community education costs.
So a follow-up question to Laurel, if we're going to make this commitment of probably $1.4 million, how can we strengthen the commitment from the ESPs, and how can we work with them more closely to ensure that we are taking the time and doing the right type of training during that period, if that's something we seek to do?
Yeah, I think that we continue with our collaborative relationship with the union. We also are working with our leaders who are creating even better and more creative uses for hourly staff every single day. As we learn more, we do better. And so we continue to have families in need, whether it's having ESPs reaching out with cards or just contacting families to check in. There are so many opportunities. I don't think we'll be at a loss, Mike, for what we can do with our employees. It's just a matter of figuring out what we need to do first to support student learning directly, and then ancillary things we can do to help with that support. We also, I don't just think about our ESPs, I also think about our school nutrition and our custodial services. So I've had conversations with custodial services staff. Once we know we're not back, then we can launch into some summer cleaning that we would normally do. And we can be proactive with our work. We just need to know, are we coming, if we're not coming back, and then we can launch some of those things.
Okay, no, that's good to hear. I appreciate that we're forward thinking and trying to find everything to do to make sure that people are engaged in learning or engaged in helping our students. So that type of commitment, I think we need to continue to build on.
Mike, I think if the staff are being honest, they're tired of me asking about that every day. Brian and Laurel and our teams about what else can we do, and I want to try to reassure you we're working as fast as we can and being as creative as we can. And I want to thank Laurel and Brian and everyone else on our team for thinking of ideas and then actually partnering with our union leaders to make those partnerships happen, right? So we have a lot of work still to do, clearly, but each day that goes by, like I said, we are coming up with new and better ideas all the time. And like what Tanya said earlier, sometimes not every idea works out, and we're going to fail a little bit along the way too. But I do give credit for a team to try to think differently than we have before. And really, there's opportunities, like Heather said, for some new training of topics we've identified in our system. We've always been hungry for it to provide and maybe had limited capacity to do. So now there's new opportunities that have presented to us.
Corey, can I add something real quick?
Please.
Jackie? Okay. That reminds me, Heather was talking about trauma-informed training for ESPs. I've had contact with Becky Hespin, and she has been offering free training in that type of area. So.
Thank you. And I think Laurel has been working with her as well, and I have a meeting with her this week again too. So we're continuing to try to put our heads together on what can we do. And Mike's got it right. We are trying to plan ahead in the event we don't come back, and we also have to plan for coming back, because until that formal order is made, we can't be caught flat-footed on that. So I think the lean and everybody's feelings are we don't know until it's formalized, I guess. So we're kind of planning both scenarios as best we can, and to Mike's point, being as forward-thinking as possible while kind of planning the here and now at the same time, knowing that we're just in our second week.
Corey, I had one more question I kept forgetting. Can I just ask quick?
Please.
I keep seeing all these postings from teachers who work in our district who are struggling to teach with their own children in the background. And I thought that teachers were considered second-tier essential workers and eligible to utilize the daycare services. Is that true or not true?
I'll let Brian and Laurel respond. They'll do a better job than I will. We've wrestled with this, so I don't know if who wants to jump in on that qualification.
It's true. The broad professional term that's used in Tier 2 is educators. So I would say they would qualify.
Do our teachers know that they qualify? Have we sent out any messages to them to let them know that that's an option for them?
we have not sent out a direct message that that's an option to them. It's included on our emergency childcare site information. Each of the tiers has about 50 professions listed. So it's a pretty extensive list.
Yeah, I noticed the list was extensive, but we don't have as many students utilizing it as I would have expected. I don't know if that's because of fear or circumstance or whatever, but I'm just wondering, should we reach out to our teachers and let them know that, hey, this is an option for you, at least even for like a few hours a day, so they can really focus on their work. I know how hard it is to have 4 kids bouncing around in the background while I'm trying to do things. And I'm not also trying to educate at the same time. And they're really struggling with that. And I just want to make sure that our teachers are aware of how important they are to this process and valued, and that there are benefits for them in this process that they might not be aware of. Mental health benefits, childcare benefits, there's things that they can take advantage of for their own benefit and sanity. And I just want to make sure our staff knows that we're there for them.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think a lot of the things you just listed we have pushed out, but it doesn't always get heard the first, second, or third time. So your point is well taken in that as our team continues to problem solve, what other ways or what messages do we need to repeat? I'm meeting with Kelly Wilson later this week as well, and can use that his influence as well from our union perspective and see what else we can do. So thank you for those points. I'm going to watch the clock a little bit. We usually honor our window of about 3 hours, and we're getting close to that. I think you got more questions. I'm sure you do, because there's so much newness to what we're accomplishing. And our goal tonight was just to give you a little deeper understanding of the work that we've done, the challenges we're facing, some of those unknown. And hopefully you see a team willing to reinvent what we're doing and continue to try to problem solve some things. And there are lots of challenges on a lot of different levels that we're working through. But with your leadership as board members and support for our team, you've done amazing work in just a short period of time. That tells me we can be successful moving forward. There's we're going to even get some more updates. I still have MDE commissioner calls at least twice a week now. They went from 5 times a week to twice a week, and we are watching the legislature. Mike, to your question, we were wondering ourselves whether there was something happening today. I didn't see anything new either, so we'll see what tomorrow brings. That's kind of been our mantra. We have daily cabinet briefing meetings for an hour and a half every day, because things change so much in a 24-hour period. So we're literally meeting what we used to do once a week, we do every day now, and we're going to continue to do that through the distance learning period. We got things out in front of us that we have to make decisions about that really do hinge on whether school continues to be in distance learning or we come back. So that's the frustration school districts are experiencing, I think, on a lot of levels. But I wanted you to at least have a little better understanding of the comprehensive areas, and we have a lot of work to do. As much as we've been successful with, what I appreciate about our team is they come with, we have a new challenge that we haven't met yet, and how are we going to get there? And they continue to step up to it. And so I ask of you as board members is continue to funnel that feedback to us on whatever topic it is. And because if you're thinking it, others are thinking it too, and you're well connected in your respective circles. So that very much is just information we can use to get better. And we have a lot of needs we're trying to meet. And I think one of the things I've been saying, I had a chance to talk with Mayor Lundy today, as he's been interviewing various leaders around the communities, and I shared that what we're facing is, what we're doing is for some not enough, for some just right, for others it's too much. And so how do we continue to dial it in and meet the needs across that spectrum? And we're trying each and every day. So maybe I'll just kind of pause and see if there's any remaining questions in our last couple minutes before I turn it back to Chair Ostafi.
This can be later, but I didn't have a response about my question about what's our role in the response to our families experiencing homelessness. And so but you can answer me offline that way. when is, I guess we have, board meetings coming up, another work session in a month. We didn't have our listening session tonight. I would, I think we need to have a listening session. I think a lot of jurisdictions are doing that via Zoom and others. I think the city of Minneapolis is just doing one too, different way of doing it. Or not the city, I'm sorry, the school district. I think now more than ever, like we have to continue to stay connected and engage in our community, and not just us pushing information out, but an opportunity to hear from our communities. And so that is my request, that we continue to have a listening session, because lives are still going on, and people have questions, and there's a lot of follow-up. I think this will never probably be the normal for anybody. It's always, we get new information every day, but I do think people, have a desire to have some kind of, like consistency in some ways. And so that's what I would like to see.
Yeah. And I would echo that. I think, as Kelsey mentioned, we've seen some other groups and we've even seen the City of Brooklyn Park in the past do kind of like a Facebook Live with streaming questions. I think there's definitely creative ways that we can do that. So I'd echo that as well.
And I just wanted to add quickly, good luck to Brian tomorrow testifying in front of I think is it the Senate committee? I'm not sure, but good luck to you tomorrow and advocating for our system.
Yeah, thank you. It is in front of the Senate Education and Finance.
Okay, good luck. Thank you.
Hey, Corey, in the short term, the survey that we're putting out, do they have open-ended questions, or is it more ranked choice or yes, no type of things?
I think Jeremy might still be on the call. Jeremy, would you be able to respond to that?
We don't have any open-ended responses at this time.
Okay. I know those are harder to read through and correlate and collate and everything else, but in the very short term, putting out something that says, what else, would you suggest we do, or what other concerns do you have, could go a long way to seeking that feedback.
We have generated some survey templates for teachers to use with students and families in their classrooms that we have provided them so that they could get a really concrete understanding of what's happening for their students in the moment right now. So that's something that we've made available for them as well, where they can collect some of that open-ended response and utilize it more as a formative assessment real time. So hopefully that will start to emerge as we move into day 8, 9, and 10 of distance learning.
Okay, thank you.
Along with the listening session request, board members, if you have any other requests as you think of them, please continue to forward them my way so we can continue to work on those. And the comments are spot on, as we really need to start thinking about how do we begin to weave in the work that we've had to pause on for some period of time to deal with the crisis element of this last month. But as a board and together, we'll need to come back and take a look at the work in front of us and do some reprioritization. So that's also in front of us at an upcoming work session or a board meeting. So we'll start planning those things out now that we'll see if we're continuing to use this virtual way of doing business, or whether or not we're coming back in the near future. But this, for the short term, is probably our reality for now. So
I just would like to make a statement quick.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to you, Corey, for all the work that you've been doing, and board members for your support of our staff, and of course the entire cabinet. I haven't said it because I've been asking questions, and I just want to make sure that you all know that I am so impressed with the work that you're doing and how you were able to just come together really quickly and put together this process for our students and our families in a way that seemed really seamless for a lot of our families. I felt like it went really effectively, getting all the equipment out and homework and all that kind of stuff. And so I just want to say I'm super impressed with everybody and how hard you have worked on this. And I think the biggest thing that I've seen through all this is how dedicated the staff is at all levels to supporting this community. And I feel like it's just absolutely phenomenal to see that when we're going through this really uncharted and chaotic time, to have such a massive group of people come together and to support one another. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to each of you. And I'm just giving you a virtual hug. So thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And that credit all really goes to the team. It's a team effort, and it really is a partnership with all of you and our communities, and so many. It's going to take all of us to do what's in front of us. So thank you for that. I'll just say one last time, board members, any additional questions or asks of our team or requests, please continue to funnel those to me. I'll continue to put information on our shared question and answer tool and continue with daily updates as long as you feel like those are valuable to you. And with that, I'll end my comments, turn over back to Chair Ostafi.
Well, thank you, Corey. Thank you, staff and cabinet for preparing this tonight. Heather stole most of my thunder. I want to thank everybody for pulling together and bringing this to us, bringing this to the community, but also, creating an environment where we have been able to start bringing learning back to our students after the shutdown. So I appreciate that. Appreciate all the hard work. With that, I don't have any other agenda items except to adjourn. So with that, I think at 9:02 p.m., pretty much almost on time, we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Will do.